call the City Council meeting to order. If everyone could silence their cell phones to begin with. And please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Today we don't have any proclamations on the agenda, but we will observe a moment of silence for J.W. Red Hoyle, who died February 20th, 2015. Mr. Hoyle was the vice mayor for the city of Asheville from 1971 to 1973, and he was a council member from 1973 to 1977. Okay, thank you. Next, we have the consent agenda, and we need to add one item, which is at your seat, the Nature Center reaccreditation application submission. That should be added as an item to the consent agenda. I think it became known that this was needed in a timely fashion before the agenda was published. And I know that everyone is eager to hear the city manager or his designee talk to us about the budget amendment, and I'm looking for the item number.
G4.
G4, thank you very much. In the amount of $20,600 to authorize the use of North Carolina State Drug Seizure Funds to fund the purchase of covert surveillance equipment and support of changing together. If you wouldn't mind addressing that, and we'll see if there's any other
Yes.
items.
In response to Council's question, to get into the specifics of that, we provided, Chief Belcher provided a memorandum, asked Chief Belcher to come forward and answer any of the follow-up questions, which I know there will be. But the nature of this equipment is actual criminal surveillance. This is the kind of tools that we use when we're doing sting operations, drug investigations, and those types of operations. These are not to be equipment used in monitoring protests or training activities. These are this is replacement equipment for the kinds of routine criminal investigations, and they're closely managed already, unlike some of the newer types of surveillance, which might be body cameras or stationary cameras that you're seeing in public settings. These are commissioned and coordinated with the district attorney's office and closely managed by the command staff of the department, which is an area we know we need to move to with more specific management guidelines and oversight and record keeping for the newer types of surveillance equipment that you see prevalent entering the law enforcement business today. With that, I'll turn it over to Chief Belcher to help answer any questions, or if I've left anything important out, Chief, to add to it.
Sure. Steve Belcher, Interim Chief of Police, Mayor and Council. The equipment, I probably should have been clear at the front end rather than at the back end, but I'll try to clarify it now. The equipment we're going to be purchasing is the equivalent of what used to be called a body cam or a body surveillance equipment. Typically, they're used mostly in narcotics transactions. The best evidence rule typically is if you're purchasing narcotics from someone, you want to record the conversation or record the transaction. So that's probably the 80 or 90% of the use. It's also does a couple other things. Oftentimes we will look at if we have a kidnap situation, extortion for ransom, people trying to get money out of somebody for something, we typically record the conversation. That's what this type of equipment is. It's It's not anything else. It's nothing to do with demonstrations or free speech issues. These are strictly criminal investigations where you've already identified the suspect. It becomes a situation where when we get to the court and the jury trials, they want to see or hear what happened during their criminal investigation. So it's a kind of a best evidence rule issue. The other part of it, this is standard practice in almost every police agency across the United States that they use equipment such as this. Use it in every department I've been. I've warned them in narcotics transactions and stuff. Also, it gives the officer at least some layer of protection from the standpoint of other officers are listening to what's going on. So if someone pulls out a gun or a knife or goes bad, other people are hearing what's happening. So it gives some layer of protection to the police officer that's putting his life in peril in many cases that's happening with these things. Once it's, and again, command officer, first of all, it has to be a written plan. Why are we going to use it? How we're going to use it? Who we're going to use it with? Has to be a written plan, a request made, has to be approved by command officer. Once it's over, all of the evidentiary material is then booked into evidence for the criminal case, and that's then forwarded to the district attorney's office for prosecution. So it's a little different than some of the body cam things we've been talking about recently and surveillance of drones or anything else along those lines. This is a standard piece of equipment that's been in use for probably 30 years. It's just changed a little bit technology-wise over the years. So open to any questions you might have to answer any concerns.
I have a question actually at the other end of the equation. I read not too long ago that the federal government was changing its posture on seizure of money from drug suspects, and I wondered how that's affected the Asheville Police Department, if at all.
It hasn't affected us all yet, mainly because even though the rules aren't codified and we haven't received any. We've heard about it the same way as you have on the news usually, but we haven't received anything in writing yet. And the difference here, you're talking about Department of Justice, the federal department, where the asset seizure funds you're dealing with today are state seizure funds that work with the Department of Justice for North Carolina.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I'd appreciate your addressing all this because there's clearly a lot of keen community interest right now with, on the other end, as you were mentioning, that this piece that we're voting on tonight is not related to the body cameras and record retention and public access and what's a training activity, what's not a training activity, and all those other questions that we're still developing the answers for and the protocol for. But I've appreciated the community's interest in this, and it's my hope that going forward we're going to have a very public process about civil liberties and about what's going to be appropriate in the community, so we can make sure that everybody's as safe as we can make them and make sure that we're protecting those civil liberties. So I'm grateful for the community and for your being here tonight.
Certainly, just I've talked to a couple of news media folks today, and once I explained what it really was, they go, oh, well, everybody uses those. So it's not quite maybe what, if I worded a little better in the report in the first place, we may not be standing here.
All right, any other questions? Okay, thank you so much.
You.
Does anyone have any other questions or want to have any of these items considered separately? Yes.
I just want to ask a question on 2B. It's the water RFQ. I guess my question is, so the city is proposing to give a design firm the phase 1 part of this contract and will automatically give a probably in excess of $30 million phase 2 phase to the same contractor. I guess I'm just kind of wondering what's the motivation for the contractor to be the best and the least expensive, et cetera, for phase 2, given that they're guaranteed the work.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor and members of the council. Actually, what you're voting on tonight or approving tonight is an engineering design contract, and the engineering firm would do the design for this project as phase 1, and then they would provide the construction and contract administration oversight for Phase 2. The $30 million is actually what we're estimating the construction contract would be. That would go out for bid, and it would be selected by bid as soon as the design is finished. At present, we don't know what that design is going to be, so we can't bid out the construction at the same time. So it'll be, the $30 million is a separate contract that will be bid out. This is Phase 1 design. Phase 2 will be construction administration and contract administration. They gave us a price for that.
Okay.
But they didn't know what the actual end design would be, so they said, you know, this number is really in flux. And I said, let's leave that number alone and just focus on the design part at this time. It was advertised as both Phase 1 and Phase 2.
But not the 30 million, just administration of the 30
Right.
million?
Right.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Move to approve the consent agenda?
Second?
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there anyone wishing to comment on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we've approved the consent agenda. We have two presentations today. The first will be given by Kirby Smithson, who's making his way to the front here. Fiscal year 2014 Carbon Footprint Report. Welcome.
Thank you.
You might need to. Kirby, introduce yourself with your title.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. My name is Kirby Smithson, Interim Sustainability Officer. Tonight, I would like to provide you with a quick update on the city's progress with respect to its carbon footprint reduction goal. As you all know, in 2008, when the Sustainability Office was created, council set a 2% annual reduction goal for city operations, and later doubled that goal in 2011 to a 4% annual reduction goal. And I am pleased to announce that we have achieved that goal once again for fiscal year 2014. So the graph you're looking at, the 29,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide is the flat line at the top of the dark green. That was our baseline in 2008. The line at the bottom of the dark green section is the council's mandated goal. And then the line at the bottom of the light green section is our actual performance to date. And you can see that in the bottom right corner, the circled number is a 4.5% reduction last year. When we look at energy spending, the story isn't quite as clear of a downward trend. We do see a lot of influence from rate increases, and fuel cost plays a big factor as well. But we have been reducing the last 2 years, which is good news. Over the past 7 years, our energy spending has varied between $5 and $6 million. You may have seen an article in the Citizen Times yesterday about this story, which was great. There was a small typo in that article. It seemed to indicate that we had saved nearly $6 million. That was actually what we were spending on $6 million. We did save about $160,000 versus the previous year. So I wish that were the case, but we're not that good yet. So how did we achieve these reductions? There were three main factors last year that helped us achieve our goals. In the fall of 2013, the city switched to a higher blend of biodiesel. So now we run B20 biodiesel in all of our city trucks and buses. And that accounted for about 40% of our reduction, just that one measure. Streetlights was also a big factor. We replaced another 1,500 streetlights with LED, mostly on major corridors in our fourth phase of LED streetlight replacement. And finally, an overall fuel reduction of about 2%. So fleet-wide, we used about 2% less gallons of fuel than we did in the previous year, and so that was a big impact as well. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, one question would be, where do you see the next areas that we can get the most bang for our bucks, or spend the least bucks for our bang, or whatever?
Thank you. I think that we still have a lot of opportunity in downtown street lighting. You know, we've replaced probably 85 to 90% of our street lights, but there's still a lot downtown that we can replace, and also increase our the quality and security of our lighting downtown. And then fleet is going to be our biggest hurdle in our carbon footprint reduction. So I think that vehicle electrification, to whatever extent we can achieve, you know, I've seen a lot of other cities running fully electric buses and fully electric large machinery as well. So I think that's definitely an opportunity for the future.
And I'm guessing that some of the fuel savings that we've seen has to do with the drop in prices.
It is. Yeah, now this graph didn't reflect much of the recent change in fuel prices, because this report was just up until the end of the fiscal year last June.
Oh, right, okay.
So and current, you know, when I do this next time, we'll see a lot of reduction in fuel spending, indeed.
So this goal was initiated in 2008, is that correct, or 2007?
07 or 08.
Because I was just trying to look at the cumulative there, and it's roughly 27%?
That's correct, yep.
So 27 of the 80 has been achieved in 7 years.
That's correct. Yep. Yep. Doing pretty well so far. It's going to get a lot harder, though.
Understood.
Yep.
It's like that last 10 pounds.
More like the last 60 pounds.
Yeah, it's like the last 60 pounds, yeah. All right, thank you.
Fantastic work.
Thank you.
We have one other presentation. Barbara Whitehorn, our finance director, is going to present to us the mid-year financial report. And it's not Barbara Whitehorn. My notes have lied to me.
Tony McDowell.
Yes, it's not Barbara. It's Tony McDowell, Budget and Financial Reporting Manager. And it is the next item on the agenda, the second quarter or mid-year financial report. The full 13-page report is included with your agenda packet. Be happy to answer any questions you may have about that. I do have a brief presentation to hit some of the highlights from that report. First of all, just to sort of summarize, I think what we're seeing through the second quarter is we're seeing very good performance both on the revenue and the expenditure side in our general fund budget. Typically, when we come to you with the first quarter report each year, a lot of our projections for the current year that we're in are based on trends we saw last year. But once we get to this point in the fiscal year, we really have a lot of good data on what's happening now, and so our projections become much more solid, much more concrete, moving forward from here on out for the rest of the fiscal year. So the data I'm showing you tonight, we feel pretty confident about where we're headed on both the revenue and expenditure side of the budget in the current year. Now there's some questions and issues around next year and future year's budget, and I'll touch on that a little bit at the end of the presentation. But for now, for the second quarter on the revenue side and the general fund budget, we have a number of revenues that are doing really well, that are exceeding our budget expectations. The economy is doing really well right now. Sales tax revenue through the first 5 months of the year is up about 10% compared to last fiscal year, which is it is the strongest growth that we've seen since the recession. We're also continuing to see very strong performance from our development services revenues, permits and fees. Their activity there continues to be high. So those revenues are doing well. Our state utility tax revenue is doing very well also. The one area where we're not doing quite as well as we'd hoped was in our property tax-based growth. We got our current year tax pay to tax base data from the county a few weeks ago, and the tax base growth was actually a little less than we had projected for this year. And I think what we're seeing there is tax base growth really is an indicator that lags behind the economy. So with, even though there's a lot of development going on right now, a lot of those developments are not making their way onto the tax roll just yet, so our tax base growth has not picked up. Now that's something we anticipate will change in the coming years, but because of all the activity we're seeing on the development side, we do expect the tax base to start growing soon, but just hasn't happened yet. On the expenditure side of the budget in the general fund, most major expenditure categories are on target. The fuel, as Councilmember Bothwell brought up, fuel has come down, fuel prices have come down, so we're doing better than budget in that area. Expenditures are under budget at this point. And I also would probably, upon further reflection, probably change the healthcare expenditure budget performance to better than budget at this point as well. And that's a trend that we've seen the last several years, a continuation of healthcare expenditures, and the cost increases there easing since the recession has ended. So moving on to our enterprise funds, again, most of the enterprise funds, we see no major issues in any of our enterprise funds at the moment for the current year. The water fund, the parking fund, both doing better than budget right now, and all the other funds are pretty much on target for where we would expect them to be at this point in the fiscal year. So I'll conclude by just saying again, I think the takeaway from this is that we're doing really well current year on the revenue and expense side and across all funds in the budget. We're starting budget planning for next year, and we do have some concerns on our revenue side for next year. Specifically, the current year that we're in is the last year that we're able to charge for business privilege licenses, and that revenue source brings in about $1.6 million to the city. Unless there's a change at the state legislature, we will not be able, that revenue will go away next fiscal year. The state's also looking at potential changes to the sales tax system, and that may impact the amount of sales tax we get moving forward. We don't know what the outcome will that'll be in the legislation in the legislature at this point. So there are some things that we're a little bit concerned about moving forward. We do expect our tax base growth to pick up moving forward, and we're going to take all those into consideration as we start budget planning for FY15-16. Any questions or comments?
I had one. On the U.S. Cellular Fund, it says that expenditures are on target, but yet we're projecting a reduction or a positive budget variance of $400,000. It's about 13%. I was just wondering if you knew, is it just a lot of little items or?
Yeah, let me find that. Yeah, I think that it is. And some of it is that I think there was planning for more events this year, so there's less events coming in, which does mean less revenue, but it also means less expenses in terms of staffing up for events and things.
No circus. Council took all share of the circus.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that is our presentations for today, so we're going to move into the public hearings portion of the agenda. The first item on the public hearings agenda is a public hearing to consider a conditional zoning on property located at 95 Craggy Avenue, 180 Louisiana Avenue, and 178 Louisiana Avenue from RS8 Residential Single Family High Density District to RS8 CZ Residential Single Family High Density District conditional zoning that will allow for the creation of 45 lots in 2 phases and associated infrastructure with a changed condition request for lot sizes and setbacks, sidewalk standards, and pavement and right-of-way widths. And before our interim planning director, Alan Glines, begins by presenting the application, let me just say just a couple of words. Mr. Glines will present I'm calling it the application, and then the developer will have an opportunity to make a presentation, and then I will open the public hearing, and members of the public may speak for 3 minutes, or if you're representing a group of 3 or more and they yield their time to you, you can speak for 10 minutes. And there's little lights on the lectern that will indicate to you when you're in the go, when you're getting close to your time, and then when your time is up. We do have, one of the later items is a conditional use permit, and we will have to swear people in for that one, but not for this first one, which is a conditional zoning, so there, we don't need to swear anyone in. Okay, ready?
Thank you, Mayor. Members of City Council, members of the public. You are reviewing today a request for a conditional zoning application for Craggy Park subdivision. The applicant is proposing to create 45 residential lots, including 2 new street sections. The project is proposing a space-saving compact development proposal to protect some of the sensitive areas of the site as common space. The project consists of 4 parcels, which join at the center but are accessed from 2 city streets. Louisiana is at the east of the parcel and Craggy Avenue from the south side. The developer proposes the recombination and subsequent subdivision of an overall project area of 8.58 acres. The property has a stream through the center, which is currently acts as a property boundary for these properties. This is a Exhibit A map showing the parcel's area, and this is an aerial which is a little hard to see with the light, but mostly a wooded site. There's a few homes on the property today, here, and here, and for general context, this is what is being proposed. Louisiana Avenue, Tanglewood, and Craggy at the south side. There is a significant grade change from the higher portions of the parcels and the lower area near the stream to reduce the impact on the stream and other natural areas, and to provide a lower impact development. The development is proposing smaller size lots, a narrower street pavement and right-of-way width, and reduced building setbacks. And the lot dimensions require approval as one of the conditions for a conditional zoning process. To the north of this project area are 2 parcels owned by the city of Asheville. And this is one here and one here. This property is known as the Falconhurst Natural Area, or commonly known as the Falconhurst Preserve. And this property is owned by the city, but leased to the Army Reserve. Those 2 parcels, the Falconhurst Preserve is an almost 8-acre parcel. It has a conservation easement to protect it in its natural state. The proposed subdivision would provide a walking path near this property for future public access. No access proposed today. Adjacent to this area again, and right here, as I noted, is the Army Reserve. That's an 8.76 acre tract. It has access from Louisiana Avenue as zoned institutional. There are no proposed connections to this parcel at this time either. Access to the site is proposed via 2 separate roadways. These are new roadways. One would be from Louisiana Avenue here, and it's the Phase 1 section of the site. And a second access point would come in from Craggy Avenue at this access point and be a circular route, one way in, one way out. They do not connect in the middle because there's a grade change with that stream bed. Open space is required for this development and is required to be a minimum of 15% of the lot area. The amount of open space required for the project is 1.29 acres, but the development is providing over 1.5 acres. Got a few plans showing that. The areas in dark green are the open space designated areas, and the areas in lighter colors are other spaces that they're providing. So in addition to the over 1.5 acres for open space, they're providing another 3/4 of an acre as common reservation space. These 2 detail sections, just to give you a little more detail on this proposal, the 2 sections. This is sort of Phase 1. It's a little more detail from Louisiana Avenue. There is an access point tying in with Louisiana, and it turns into a turnaround here The sidewalk section here goes to about this point and connects to the street. There's also sidewalk proposed along Louisiana Avenue. This section doesn't produce more than 300 trips per day, so there's a waiver in the UDO for streets that don't have over 300 cars per day. They're not required to extend sidewalk all the way to the end of the street. And this part of the development, scrolling up just a little more, a connection to Craggy here. The road is a sort of a circular route. Lots are along all sides. There's green space here in front. There's a green connection in the middle, lots on both sides there. And they are asking for a council condition to waive that complete section of sidewalk. The sidewalk is provided along Craggy. It comes into a portion of the street here and stops at this, sort of at the Y. In addition to that issue, a few other issues that council may consider as part of a conditional zoning request. 35 of those 45 lots being proposed in this development will be less than the district standard of 5,000 square feet. The lot sizes would range from 2,600 square feet to 4,900 square feet per your request. Per request of you, I should say. Lot setbacks. The development is seeking setback reductions from the district standards, which are typically 15 front and rear and 6 on the sides. And they are asking for a consistent 5 feet on the front and sides and 10-foot rear setback. A single lot, Lot 11, is seeking a front setback of only 2 feet. Lot widths. 23 of the lots are requesting the approval of a lot width reduction, which is less than the district standard of 50 feet. The proposed lot widths would range of between 30 feet and 48 feet for the ones that do not meet. Comparing this proposal to other, the neighborhood sections. The subject parcels and the adjacent lots are all zoned RS8 with an institutional parcel to the north of the site, as we pointed out before. The property is immediately surrounded by single-family homes with the Army Reserve occupying that city parcel. The proposed development area taken with the additional open space area provides a rough density of about 5.25 units per acre. And like the proposal, single-family homes are common in the surrounding area. So this proposal is for single-family development. This property is located on a bus line and is within walking distance to a number of services and retail businesses, including Patton Avenue and Haywood Road. We feel that when we were reviewing this proposal, one of the smart growth principles in the development plan, Comprehensive Plan 2025, highlights the importance of higher density infill development where infrastructure can easily be provided. This isn't exactly high density development, but it is infill development. Given the proximity to commercial and mixed use along Patton Avenue, access to transit, and the character of the surrounding neighborhood, the residential development proposal seems appropriate. Although the comp plan also speaks to the need for affordable housing, it is usually within the context of high-density multifamily development. The plan also encourages the protection of riparian areas and creating connections to park spaces. Those connections to future park spaces could happen, but that would have to go through separate application. This protection of the riparian buffer, or providing a riparian buffer, mitigates water pollution and mitigates also erosion control. The Technical Review Committee reviewed the application at their meeting on December 1st and approved it with conditions. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended unanimous approval of the conditional rezoning request at their meeting on January 7th. A project like this coming to council has a number of conditions that are requested and provided for. And this condition list is really a conversation between City Council and the developer. And so what the two parties, what you all agree to, becomes conditions for this site. So one of the things that we'd like to obviously include here is the site plans, which are that future development or the development will be substantially compliant with the site plan provided and reviewed tonight by you all. We provided this list of conditions to you all. There's a few additions which reflect the ongoing conversation between council and the developers for this project. And those reflect in the last three on your list. I think you have in front of you 19, 20, and 21. And these are requests that the property owner, the developer, work with the Asheville Design Center to further the design and development of the Smith Mill Creek Greenway. Also, number 20, the property owner agrees to pursue restoration of the streams located on the property in areas 3 and 10 on the site plan, page 316, and to work with Riverlink or other similar organizations to effectuate the restoration. I've had a clarification of that from the development team, and they'd like to clarify that to say that they would pursue that stream restoration with Riverlink if there is a grant to do the work. They have to apply for a grant. It's a separate process, and there has to be funding in order to do that. They're asking that you all consider that if there is a grant to do the work. And otherwise, they would plan to do stream enhancements, which may not be to the same level as a stream restoration. The development team has mentioned to me that they will be happy to explain that to you all, what the difference is. And finally, this last condition, that the property owner would create and post a sign at or near the boundary with the property with the Falconhurst natural area, informing the public as to the condition of the natural area and any rules and regulations which are applicable to the natural area. At this time, there's not any improvements here at the natural area. It's conditioned through deed, it's restricted, and the city has to comply with a conservation easement that is in place on that property. So it is a working together with the conservation, the easement holder, and the city parks department to provide some kind of facility there and manage that. So that will happen at a future date, but until that time, there'll be a posting near this connection here to say, this is the natural area, it's not open at this time, but at a future time it could be. And we hope that that would be happen at a future date. So I'll leave this plan up, and I can answer any questions for you, but that is most of my comments.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Alan, you said earlier that it would be public access through the property provided at a future date. And it may be that what you're talking about there is a future greenway that would run completely through the natural area along the stream and then ultimately connect into the Falconhurst. Have I got that right?
Right. So the property to the north is the preserve area. This is the area here. This is the site we're reviewing for the conditional zoning. The greenway this way, north and south, has not been completely determined. But I think that this condition is seeking the developer to help figure that part out. The Smith Mill Greenway would be in this area here, right behind Patton Avenue. That's where the creek is.
No, I'm actually asking about public access across this property to allow others in the broader neighborhoods of Craggy and Tanglewood, et cetera, to make their way down along the creek in the natural area and then on to Falconhurst. Now, is that what you were referring to?
Let's see if I've got that.
When he said natural area, what do you mean?
But it's that there's no condition yet.
Yeah, number 19 refers to the Smith Mill Creek Greenway, but not to that public access piece.
Well, they've discussed some connections to through their property. Let's see if we've got that clear enough.
I don't think it's one of the conditions yet. And I wanted to ask just to see if I get clarity. I'll say that I'm interested in establishing an easement or a guaranteed certain commitment to that, because we have a developer now. Someday in the future there'll be a homeowners association, and this needs to be very clear on the front end and not negotiated later.
So I think we could work on considering that with the developer. I believe they're probably aware of a need for a connection for a future greenway.
Right. Yeah. Let's let them make the presentation. Then we can do the public hearing, and we can talk about that later.
Yeah, I have a question. As a practical matter, larger lots for homes tend to have more green space around them. I mean, my yard has a lot of places for birds and stuff in my yard, and rabbits and squirrels and a groundhog that eats my lettuce. So larger lots actually provide a lot of green space around the houses, even if you don't call it designated green space or common area. So in a sense, by permitting more homes in a denser area, aren't we reducing the actual green space in this neighborhood?
Well, I think when you have a private development, you certainly can have a fence and you can keep people off that property and those kinds of things. If it's sort of more of in a common, it's definitely a shared resource. We talk about the sharing economy. Maybe this is sharing infrastructure in a way, sort of informally. I don't know. It might balance out to be about the same when you consider what that density is. They're not seeking a density increase per se, but they are seeking to densify the portions they're developing. So it's sort of a trade-off. The UDO does not permit this just by right. So this is our process for arriving at this point, and hopefully you all feel that it's worth the effort to try to go this way.
Alan, related to that, one of the concerns that I've heard from many of the surrounding neighbors is that the lots that we're being asked to approve tonight are significantly smaller than would traditionally be allowed in the zoning for that area there. Were we to require them to build to the existing zoning there, can you just kind of talk a little bit about how this design plan might be changed if that were required?
Right. When it comes to developing any subdivision, it's frontage on a street. That's where your value is. You have to touch the street with your piece of property to subdivide. So what could change, and we don't typically provide an alternate design, but just thinking out loud here together, what one might do is everywhere they have frontage at a street, especially streets that are already there, they would make sure the lots would be created at those juncture points or connecting points. So where there's not really a house lot here on Louisiana, that might be something that could be looked at. Or here at Craggy, along this side here where, I'll show you on this map, this is more of a kind of a community common or open space. You might shift the road over and put some houses here. That could change things a little bit, add a few more houses or lots. In addition to that, the UDO provides a provision to do a certain number, like a percentage, about 10%, flag lots. And flag lots are only required to have a 20-foot flag pole part, if you will, touching the right-of-way area, and then the conforming lot space is kind of in the back. So you have the house in the back. Sometimes you drive by and you see that. That would not require a lot of frontage, but it could provide additional lots. The other thing is, if this street was widened and maybe even wide enough such that those houses would perch over the side more, over that edge, you still could put the stream could be in a private backyard. We don't have a requirement that says the stream has to be common space. In this case, it's proposed that way, but people do have streams in their backyard, so that could be backyard space, and there would just be a lot more wider of development. The footprint would go wide, the grading would expand, and they would stretch this out to create more street frontage and therefore more lots that could come along with this.
And I guess you would lose that proposed green space as proposed now?
That's right. Likely you would. You'd have some percentage, but not like it is today.
Ellen, do you recall what the length of the lease on the Armory property is? How long will they have that, and are they happy with it now and will probably ask for more?
I believe it's, I had heard, and I can't be sure, but it's in a short duration, it's with less than 5 years probably a renewal of that. So we could try to look into that for you.
It's not that important. I can recall when we extended the lease, but I did not remember the terms of it. I was thinking we were somewhere around there, so that's not going to change anything in the near term.
Not immediately.
Just to follow up on that, so the lease would end, and generally if an agency like the Army Reserve would want to renew it, we would typically try to honor that. And we don't have any indication that the Army Reserve plans to leave there. Is that a true statement?
That's, as far as I know, there's no movement that way.
Thanks. Yeah, I want to make sure people don't get the impression the Army Reserve is
Yeah.
packing up and leaving because the lease term is
Right.
ending.
That's right.
That being said, when it comes time to renegotiate the lease, we may have opportunity to extend this public access space down to Smithville Creek Greenway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there other questions?
There is a valid protest petition on this application, so I wanted to point that out. And then I wanted to ask Alan, did you, and I guess we could ask the applicant, right now, condition 20 has not been agreed to by the applicant?
They would agree to it if it was changed, as I noted.
Right, but as it's written, so
written, it's
that's
not.
going to have to be modified in some shape or form or taken out or whatever.
Right, and then
Okay.
also the possibility of that, the greenway, a future greenway, an easement for a future greenway crossing the property.
Okay.
Okay, now we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening. I'm Brian Nelson. I'm a principal of East West Craggy. Pardon me. First of all, Alan, thank you for the overview. We appreciate the input that city staff has provided over the last year, and we are pleased to have the opportunity to present this evening to council in consideration of our conditional zoning request. I'd like to take 2 minutes and just share our vision. I'm going to turn it over to David Tuck in a few minutes, sort of sandwiched between the technical input, but I think it's important that we as a developer share what our vision is and what our intentions have been. Since we started this project, we committed to transform this property into a neighborhood where people who care about green living feel inspired to live. So we've designed a low-impact development that takes into consideration a careful balance of the environment, the community, and the economic realities of infill development in the city. I think you know our team to understand what our intentions and qualifications are. Jody Gukas, Jag Construction, as you know, Jody is committed to green building. He and his family happen to be an adjacent lot owner as well to this property. Mike Fagura, also committed to green building, principal of Mosaic Realty. And Mike, as well, lives in West Asheville with his family. David Tuck of Equinox and his team, Gary Davis, Davis Civil Solutions, and my business partner, David Moritz. Over the past year, we've worked tirelessly to define plans that actually fit the land and also the fabric of the community. We met with the city numerous times. We also recognize that the word development causes some unsettling feelings, and so we sent 400 mailings out to surrounding homes. We held 2 meetings at the West Asheville Public Library. We've had numerous one-on-one meetings with neighbors and some communications as well. We do believe that many developers would have approached this project and avoided going through the conditional zoning process altogether and just done a conventional approach, which would have resulted in substantial grading and impact to the property. In order to yield enough units to make it economically feasible, we don't think that approach would be consistent with the values and the goals of City Council, of the community at large, or with us. And so our plans, after having carefully thought through them, also align with the comprehensive plan of the city. We've been to P&Z, as you're aware. P&Z unanimously recommended this project for approval. We've received a number of letters from very qualified, very reputable organizations that support the project. We're offering the right-of-way, which we think is important. Should the city decide in the future that the city would like to open the Falconhurst Natural Area, we'd like to partner with that, and have already started that process with Asheville Design Center. We've also spoken with Riverlink about the grant that was mentioned, and David will provide some more details as we go through. And clearly this project serves the community with real economic benefits, 45 new green-built homes in a market that's scarce of supply, and also development and density does support local jobs and businesses and a rising tax base that was mentioned earlier this evening. We would like to get started. It's important to get started. We lost a couple of weeks with the publication notice. Tonight we're asking that you approve our conditional zoning request as we've submitted it and help to maintain this balance it's a sensitive balance of the environmental and economic factors that we've worked really hard to achieve over the past year. So I'd like to turn it over to David, and he'll provide more details and answer some of the questions that Council raised a few minutes ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Pleasure to be here. You've heard from the development team. They've provided us with a clear vision, which was to create a livable community that is beautiful and environmentally responsible. And so we were tasked with balancing that with density and green space. So the planning team took that. We looked at an infill site, and as you are probably very aware, that there are limited infill sites in Asheville that you can do development on. Over the past 12 years, I've looked at numerous properties, and most of the times they haven't processed past the feasibility stage because of topographic constraints, the cost for construction, the inability to meet city requirements, or perhaps we could develop a plan, but it would go through the conditional zoning process, and some folks don't want to take on that additional risk. So there is a real need that we have seen for housing, and there is a limit with infill development sites where we can put housing. And so I think that is something that we need to be aware of. Here with this development, we have an infill development that has clustered home sites. We maintain tree buffers along the property edges. That was a request that came out of some of the community meetings with the neighbors. We've doubled the required community green space. We're providing greenway connectivity and a trail system. So the list can go on and on. Alan did a really fine job, really detailed job of explaining all those amenities. So to me, this project provides you an opportunity to vote for infill, to vote for a low-impact development, to vote for a sustainable development that balances pedestrian amenities. We have tried very hard to meet the city's goals, your own adopted goals for development, and we feel like we've accomplished this with the layout of Craggy Park. So just a few key points. I think it's very important to note we are not asking for more density. We are not asking for a rezoning of this property. We're asking for design flexibility to create a more sensitive development. The main principle of our site design is to create a compact cluster development that includes low-impact development. I will touch on in a moment of what that really means when we say low-impact development. Another thing that I think is important to point out is that Asheville has an option that allows for flexibility by right with the Sustainable Development Projects designation in the UDO. We're not eligible for that because we're single family. We are within an 1/8 mile of a transit line. That is the requirement to qualify for that. So if you had the ability for this to apply for single family, this designation, it would be a use by right project. I think that's something perhaps worth considering. A special feature of the project is that we are proposing public access through a greenway easement. And so we'll show that on the master plan here in a moment. And then with the public meetings that we had, at the time of the public meetings, we had to do that before we started to develop our plans. The points that were mentioned to us were density. We heard that multifamily wasn't something that the neighbors wanted to see. Buffers to protect their lots from the new lots from the existing neighborhood lots, and then stormwater. How do we deal with stormwater from a new development that's going to be coming into our neighborhood? So I'm not going to read all of the goals that this project meets, but I'm just going to touch on a few. Smart growth goals for sure. Healthy housing products. So the Green Building Council, they have a criteria that you can go through to get your houses certified. It used to be Healthy Built Homes, now it's Green Built Homes. All the homes will go through that process. Located near a transit line, Alan had said that already, I believe, and compatible with the surrounding development. And I'll show that a little bit why I think it is compatible with the surrounding development. So we're saying that this is a low-impact development, and I'm not quite sure that everyone understands what that means. It's a way to develop a site so you can protect the hydrology and the water quality of an area. You're protecting watersheds, okay? And the goals and the benefits of low-impact development are it's preserving water quality, it's reducing flood occurrences, reducing impervious cover. Okay, you've heard that we're trying to get narrower roads, and this is one of the things that applies to low-impact development. Maintains hydrology, preserves habitat. So aquatic insects and animals and all those things along a riparian corridor, that's all important. So So those are the benefits of low-impact development. I wanted to talk a little bit about how our property fits into the context of the West Asheville neighborhood. From this image here, you can see the concentric circles. We have an 1/8 mile and a 1/4 mile. We have one bus transit stop within an 1/8 mile and 2 within a 1/4 mile. You can also see the yellow dashed line on the top. That is the proposed Smith Mill Creek Greenway. The blue is the Armory, and the green, that's the Falconhurst Natural Area. Okay, so when we looked at this property, we thought it was very important to assess the lot sizes. Now, our average lot size is 3,500 square feet. We did a GIS analysis of a half-mile radius from our development, and there are 91 lots that are 3,500 square feet or less. Okay, and then also on top of that, Planning and Zoning stated that this quote, the proposed lots are properly sized for single-family use, unquote. So we do feel like this development pattern really fits in, and on top of that, because of how close we are to goods and services, looking at this map, smart growth tells you you want your higher density near those goods and services. Again, we're not asking for more density though. There was a question to Alan about what could this property look like, or how many lots maybe could we get. Now, we could do some standard calculations as a starting point to tell us where we might be able to get with density. And so the way to do that is you can take out the open space, you can take out the right-of-way that you might need for a road, and then you can take the remaining space and divide it by the minimum lot size, which is 5,000 square feet. That gets you to around 51 units. Well, let's say because of our topography, we can't quite get that much. We have not done a study. Do I get beeped too for this?
No.
Okay. So we haven't done a study because that's an additional step to come with a whole new development plan to show you what we could get if we didn't do an infill development like this, that's compact and clustered. The point I would also like to make with the density question, I guess there's really 2 points. First, the calculations, but then the second point is that I don't really feel that that's something that we should really weigh in on. It should not really impact this, because if you look at traditional developments, there's going to be more impact to the site. There's going to be less green space, and I will like to address your comment on that in a moment, if I could, about the green space and larger lots. You wouldn't have low impact development, you wouldn't have greenbelt homes, you wouldn't have public access through the property. And so we feel very strongly we can get the same number of lots. Maybe you disagree with me on that, but at the end of the day, the alternative is not something that we would like to see. It's not something I think that is in line with the city council values. It's not something that the developers or I would like to do. We want to create a livable community where people want to live. So this is the development. I'm going to start on Louisiana. When you're first coming in the road, there's a little green space, and that's where we're going to do some bioretention. As you continue down the road where the turnaround is, we're going to have a trail system that connects both pieces of the development. The trail that goes to Tanglewood, we have a trail easement designated on our plan. So that might get to the question that Mr. Hunt had earlier. So we already have that designated. So as you continue across, you see the stream, and this is where originally we said we're going to do stream enhancements. There's a big difference between stream restoration and stream enhancements. Riverlink approached us, and we said, sure, we'll participate. If you want to pursue a grant, we'll allow you the space on our property to restore that. So that's the conversation we had, and we can get into the language for that. Some of the most valuable spaces on the property are set aside for common spaces. I can't really point to them, but they're some of the flatter areas, or they have some of the nicest trees. And so instead of setting those aside for building home sites, we set them aside for the public and the community. In the center of our loop, we have a common space and a green space at the homes front, and that's kind of a cottage garden feel to the home sites right there. You can also see where we have identified the stormwater treatment location. That's kind of where our signature stormwater control measure is going to be, and that's part of our low impact development, along with natural channels to deal with stormwater, so swales and things like that, instead of curb and gutter with pipes. I think those are some of the main features of the design that I wanted to point out. And just in closing, some of the design elements of note, we've mentioned this before, the innovative stormwater control measures as part of the low-impact development, our reduction of impervious surfaces, green space, open space, and preservation, stream enhancements, pedestrian-oriented amenities, green building, green-built homes, and we're providing what I think is a much-needed housing through infill development.
All right, does anyone have any questions before we open the public hearing? No? Okay, thank you. All right, at this time, I'll open the public hearing. If there's anyone wishing to speak on this item, did you want to address? Nope, you're just getting papers. Okay. Anyone wishing to speak on this item? Yes. And if you'll just remember to state your name, that would be helpful.
Good evening, Catherine Morris, and I am from the Falconhurst neighborhood, and I believe I will be asking for 10 minutes. I have two neighbors who have ceded me some time.
1, 2, we need one more.
I'm sorry?
One more. Oh, there we go. Okay, so that means you've yielded your time on this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to say thank you to each of you that came out to see the property and to take your time to walk it with us. I was very impressed with the fact that you looked at this very carefully, and I hope you've maintained an open mind. I know that we've wanted to influence you strongly with how we feel about it, but in the long run, it is something that, you know, once you hear all of us and our concerns, I hope you will make a careful decision about this. And I admit I am very prejudiced in favor of this property not being developed and being potentially finding a way to work with the developers or whatever to preserve this parcel. It would be an invaluable asset to the city for the future. I can't say that strongly enough. We have a commitment to infill density, and I won't say we, because I don't feel that way, but we have a commitment to the future, not just the present or 1 or 2 years down the road. The commitment to the future as part of government's responsibilities is also to protect our natural environment and the other inhabitants of the natural environment. Our future, if we're losing developable space, we're also losing space, green space, that is critical to the quality of life of the citizens of Asheville. Not just that for the visitors and the people that come here, because they don't want to just see concrete and houses and businesses. They want to have places to recreate. If we don't have sufficient places to recreate, to enjoy nature, they will go elsewhere. They will get in their cars and they will drive and they will go elsewhere. So this, I would hope, in our conversations, we could consider and think about very strongly, because I think we have a responsibility to the future for that. I was involved in the original effort to help preserve the Falconhurst natural area. There are several neighbors here that were also involved in a part of that, and the part of that was it was already owned by the government. The whole community came together and said this could be a beneficial asset. And this was in the mid-90s. Here 20 years later, we are recognizing that our vision at that time was right, because we have anxious developers who want to take advantage of the work that we did back then and this wonderful area that we have preserved, by virtue of the fact that it was landlocked and was not accessible to the public, has remained beautiful. And I think each one of you could look over there and see that this was a marvelous asset for the city. It does have a very strong conservation covenant on it. So you have a strong legal liability to preserve that area and to make sure that it is kept, in essence, in its highest and best state for the future. And that means developing a plan that takes care of that space and that doesn't allow it to be degraded by rampant public access. The city needs to have, if this area is to become a playground for the development or for the rest of the city, you need to have a way to monitor that and to take care of it and to restore it if it is damaged. One of the things that concerned me at the very first was the developer's intent to immediately jump in and start designing trails to go into that natural area without even a management plan, or without the city even having the ability to go in there and monitor it on a regular basis. I think for the future, if we can't avoid development, and that is my fervent wish that we could find a way to avoid it, then I think we need to have strong protections for this parcel. We worked very hard to get it, and it wouldn't take much to really degrade it and to destroy it. We've asked, I think, in the neighborhood, and we've asked y'all to help us. If you're going to approve this today, which I hope you're not, then we would think that you would want to have like a good neighbor fence or something, like berms, something that helps these people respect the property line and to respect the boundaries, because there would be nothing to stop them from just going in and saying this is someplace where I can find some nice ferns and, you know, a few other plants and they'll look good in my backyard. I want to know how you would go about fulfilling your legal obligations to help protect that natural area if this is to come about. I agree with my neighbors that will be coming forward later, that we have traffic concerns, very strong traffic concerns. We have infrastructure concerns on Craggy Avenue for sure. We also feel that perhaps there will be some traffic issues on Louisiana at the entrance to this site. That's very big, it's a state road, and I know that that is something that we would have to negotiate with the state, but I think we would be looking at that as well. We are also worried about sidewalks and, or at least pedestrian access and safety concerns. Quality of life is perhaps our biggest concern, because with the increased potential density of this, the extra traffic will make a lot of our roads rather unbearable. We have a development on Haywood Road that is going to probably dump quite a bit of traffic into the neighborhood as well. And so my neighbors will speak to that. Lastly, I'm going to talk about, just very briefly, there's an article by Roland Watson written in 2008 on the responsibilities of government. Why do we have government? Because for years, society has existed without government. And government is there to help us with things like infrastructure, communications, utilities, traffic, telephone, water, sewer, defense of our, not just defense of our national borders, but now defense within our borders. It's also to help protect us. And in these days, it's also for, not only just for healthcare, infectious diseases, we also almost consider healthcare a right, and you help us with that. But it's also for laws and regulations, arbitrate disputes. We feel that one of the other strong responsibilities of government is to help us in the protection of our natural world. And this development, while the density meets strict code in the sense that they would be putting in fewer houses than code would necessarily allow them, it would be potentially degrading the natural environment more strongly than we feel is appropriate, at least next to the natural area. And I would encourage you to remember that you are accountable not just to us, but to all of the citizens for the decisions that you make and what you do. It's not just about density, and it's not just about the other stuff. It's also about quality of life and providing some of that for those of us who live here and pay our taxes. So we thank you for your deliberations. I hope you will keep an open mind as you hear my neighbors speak, and we will live with your outcomes. Thank you.
Anyone else? Hello.
My name's Paul Olszewski. I live at 88 Craggy. I have 3 other people that are going to allow me to speak for them. First thing I have is I have 3 questions, and it means that the developer might need to answer them, and if I have him answer them and he takes up my whole time.
No, what you'll need to do is pose your question. This does
And then
happen
at
once
the
in a while,
end.
and then at the end
Okay.
of the public hearing process, the developer will have an opportunity to respond.
So-
So developer, take notes.
Well, I'm going to put them up here.
All right, there you go.
See what they are. So the first question is, on Monday, this is the other day, I was taking my garbage out, and my neighbor, he's a doctor who lives across the street from me. He lives on a piece of property. So let me tell you this. Before this property was bought by the East-West Capital, Barbara Davis owned it, and she sectioned off certain parts of it and sold little chunks here and there. And Jody's first house he lived in was one of those chunks of property that this doctor now lives in. Right before the sale of this property with Mosaic and happened, Jody approached a few of the neighbors who have those parcels of property that were originally plotted on that land and said, could you sign this piece of paper? It's really important. It will allow you to put an outbuilding on your backyard, and David and Doreen's house, they're going to have to remove their crafts shed if they don't sign it. So they signed it. So David and Doreen signed it. My neighbor said, you know, he brought me that piece of paper and he wanted me to sign and notarize it, but I didn't do that. So I was wondering if there was some technicality that happened even before their property was bought. And it had something to do with deed restriction and subdividing the property. So I emailed that to you and Ellen the other day, just so you had a heads up. But I'm talking to the law firm to see what that was and if it has anything to do with this overall process. So that's one of my questions. My other question would be I wanted to know from the developers, if we wanted to buy 2 parcels of land, 2 plots of land, and put 1 house on it, how much that property would go for. I've been told it would cost $165,000 for 2 lots, and if they're at 1/8 of an acre, that's basically doubling the size, the cost of a normal lot in our neighborhood. So they're driving up the rates of property by double by condensing these and charging that much for each piece of property. My third question was to you about how small an actual lot can be with the RS8 CZ conditional zoning. And I've asked that question and I never got an answer fully as to, is it 3,500 square feet? Is it 2,000 square feet? And I wondered if that was put in place or if there was an answer to that question, or if it just is dependent upon the developers and their plan. So one of the things I checked out was, you know, we always wanted an alternative plan, and I emailed this to all of you. And I'm not a developer, I'm not a designer for for this kind of work, but I did draw up a plan where I used the scale down below, and I used a 50-foot by 100-foot square. Each of those are 50-foot by 100-foot, and I plotted it out for 5,000 square foot lots. Now, it comes out that you're able to put 40 5,000 square foot lots on this property because it has been so chopped up. And there's little corners here that they're putting houses in, and I even gave them some overlap of, some of them don't even fit in the spaces and some of them go over the roads, but I just wanted to show that 40 houses will fit here, not 45 or 48. And so the pink are 5,000 square foot lots. The green are for the green space that they proposed, and the blue are partial lots. So I threw that out there because at P&Z, they were saying, well, the neighborhood just wants to see an alternative plan. Can't you show them this? And then, I think Joe Minicozzi stood up and it passed right through. And this question was, swept under the carpet. So I went and did it, and, I'm not a scientist in this matter, but it just shows that maybe they are pushing for maybe 5 or 6 extra lots. And we would love if there were 5 or 6 less lots. We like their technique of swales and no curbs and green space and walkways along the creek. We think that's all great. But I think that they are increasing the density over and beyond the RS8. Chris, when you walked through there, I think you were pretty shocked by how small some of the lot sizes were. And so I'd like you to keep that in consideration. As far as that goes, I'm done with talking about that. I'd just like to say, it's been great working with all of you, and you saw how our neighborhood works and how our community works, and we're really open to alternative ideas. And not everybody wants sidewalks on Craggy. We've talked about, we all have property, we've talked about alternative routes throughout the neighborhood, taking people off of the roads and through greenways, kind of like Biltmore Lake has. There are paths through backyards and that kind of thing, just because, keep people away from the streets, and then they're safe. One of our main concerns is traffic, and we've talked also about closing Druid. And if Druid was closed, it's connecting one of the second worst intersections in the country, as I've been told, at Leicester and Patton Avenue. All those people cut through our neighborhood. And if that was closed, it would make a huge, huge impact on our neighborhood. And, maybe then we could live with these 40 houses and 80 more cars, plus the other development up at Haywood Village. So those are just some things I'd like you to think about. And those few questions, especially, I'm kind of curious about that first piece of paper that they had the neighbors sign. I'm kind of curious what that was. And so thank you very much. Thank you for coming out. It was nice to meet all of you.
I think we can answer the council question about the square feet in the RS8 CZ. A CZ by its nature can be whatever you want it to be. Mm-hmm. If I'm
Yes, what this would do is that they have to use the lots as they're laid out in the site plan, and that determines the size of the lots. And so then, once the lot sizes are determined by the CZ, then the subdivision has been approved contingent on that. So they work together, but the lots will be as they're laid out on this plan.
Okay. There's some that are just crammed in people's backyards, right on top of some of the existing neighbors' backyards. And I don't think anybody was ready for this when they bought their house 10, 12, 15, 20 years ago. So please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak that has not already yielded their time?
Good evening. My name is David Dvorak, and I live adjacent to the proposed subdivision. I'd like to make 3 simple points, and one is that I strongly disagree with the contention that the proposed development fits with the existing neighborhood. By simple fact that the developers are asking for significant variances on 35 of the 45 lots, all told just in variances on lot size, frontage, and width. That's 103 variances on those 45 lots. If the project was going to fit in the neighborhood, it would not need to have those significant variations. The second point is that the developers have assured us that this development is preferable to anyone another developer would do. I want to remind us all that that is pure speculation. Nobody else has come forward with a plan. We have not seen a plan that is not predicated on these significant zoning variances. My third point is that we've been told that this is necessary for Asheville. This development and is necessary for people moving here. We need more housing. Our housing
is at a very low level. But there has to be a balance between the people who are coming to Asheville and may come in the future, future landowners, future homeowners, and the homeowners that chose the Falconhurst neighborhood for its characteristics that it has today, and not the characteristics that would change as a result of this proposed development. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Hello. My name is Susan Spies. I live at 46 Blue Ridge. We moved here in 2008. This is the our main intersection, Craggy and Blue Ridge. In fact, when we moved to Asheville, we wanted to live in the city. I wanted to live near people, businesses, and city services with easy, close access, and preferably without a car. So I'm not opposed to the development in general, nor to the Craggy Park project in particular. Along with my neighbors, I'm hoping for a less dense development, but I do like the aesthetics of the project overall, and I love the potential access along the creek to the future Falconhurst Park and Smith Mill Creek Greenway. In fact, I probably wouldn't be speaking here at all if it weren't for the fact that only last year, at the Planning and Zoning and the City Council approved, I think, 65 units, just one lot over from my house, which is the village on Haywood. I'm not necessarily opposed to that project either. It was high time that that parcel be developed. But when Craggy Park appeared on the horizon, I then began to wonder what is going to happen to our neighborhood streets. I consider walkability to be one of the biggest quality of life factors in an urban setting, and walkability includes being able to walk down the street. But depending on the outcome tonight, the historic neighborhood of Falconhurst in West Asheville, with hardly a sidewalk and a favorite cut-through of many, will be getting close to 110 new units and all the increased traffic that involves. This will be a very different Falconhurst than the one we all know and currently still love. I've read all the pros and cons of this infill development currently happening in Asheville, and some aspects of it sound like good urban planning, especially keeping city amenities accessible by foot when possible. But if the city is planning to continue down that path of increased development, isn't it also time to launch a comprehensive program to help neighborhoods like ours cope with all this development? And what better place to start than the historic neighborhood of Falconhurst, which is potentially soon to be the recipient of more residential units than most anywhere else in Asheville, all at one time. In late January, I wrote you all a detailed email advocating that the city launch what I called a neighborhood repurposing program. That was a term I picked up from Alan Glines in a meeting last fall. Such a program would largely entail the traditional and more recent innovations in traffic calming, the usual speed bumps, bump outs, mini traffic circles, shared lane markings, and neighborhood and safety signage, as well as off-road trails, which I would strongly support. But what I want to see, and where we would really need your help, is getting a real program in place that happens in parallel to all this infill development, and not the current situation, which is neighbors haphazardly trying to get a speed bump or a stop sign for their street, sometimes a process that takes even years. Such a program doesn't cost much either, but it does require a real commitment from city officials to make it happen. In doing so, the city would be sending a clear signal that it is concerned about the impact of infill development and is ready to offer some solid support to neighborhoods such as ours. On that note, regardless of your vote tonight, I would encourage you to make a serious and innovative approach to neighborhood infrastructure as your next priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. I think, okay. Yeah, all right. That was confusing. Okay.
Hello, I'm Alice Cohen. I'm at 39 Blue Ridge Avenue. And let's see if this helps. My focus is traffic, to consider the traffic. I support what my neighbors have already addressed, and I'm very concerned about the increase in traffic that we've already heard about a little bit. I really appreciate those of you who were able to join my neighbors in walkthroughs of the neighborhood. You can see that Craggy Avenue is very narrow and it's very steep right there. So, so there are some considerations. What we currently have is in the Falconhurst community, is a wonderful, walkable community, a high percentage of young families, mixed income homes, that's another big concern by several of us. City and smart growth values include many of the above values. Additionally, Craggy Park addresses urban infill and green space considerations. But there are apparent conflicts with some of those target values. The current amount of traffic on Craggy is already unsafe. When we walk our dogs, walk our families, our children, it's so narrow that it's unsafe. There's parking right there. There's the limited visibility on the steep section. So it's currently unsafe. We have, according to Jeff Moore's numbers, 450 trips per day. And the Craggy Park is projected to add 250 trips per day. And one consideration in conversations with Jeff Moore, trying to learn more about traffic engineering and the numbers and how that works, apparently the villages on Haywood, which you see here, and the development is generally, I just kind of generally drew it in, is here. The villages are not incorporated into the traffic numbers. And I think that's a significant flaw. Whatever the formulas are that traffic engineers use, I think that there needs to be some consideration. What I understand from Jeff Moore is that Haywood Road is, 85%, 95% of the trips from the village on Haywood would be attributed to Haywood Road. And only 5%, only 5 to 6, I believe, 5 to 6 trips at a peak hour would be attributed to Blue Ridge or Mitchell, so either side of the Haywood Village. I live right here, and I know that I and my neighbors all choose to go to Craggy instead of Haywood because Haywood's so congested already. So I don't see any rationale yet that says that we will not be contributing more traffic from the Haywood Village onto Craggy. So it's directly related to this adjacent, relatively adjacent development. So that's a huge concern. What I'm concerned about most, and what I would ask y'all to consider, is walkability, safety, and the general character of West Asheville. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Monica Hall. I'm a speech language pathologist. I work in geriatrics, and I'm the rehab director at Deerfield Episcopal Retirement Community. I'm also the agency administrator for North Carolina over Pisgah Manor, Heather Glen at Arden Woods, Deerfield, and Brooks Howell Home. I'm telling you all that because I drive a lot going in and out of this neighborhood. I've lived in the neighborhood for 11 and a half years, and I've stepped up here tonight because I'm concerned for the oldest and the youngest in the neighborhood. As I've explained, I'm a working mom, and I have 2 young boys. My driveway is on Craggy and almost directly across from the proposed entry into Craggy Park. Pulling out even now and going to work to take my sons to school is already difficult due to the traffic. The street, Craggy, is and Falconhurst in general, is a popular cut-through, as my neighbors have explained. There are no sidewalks, and cars do speed down Craggy Avenue. There's an older gentleman on the corner of Craggy and Tanglewood who recently lost his wife to Alzheimer's, and he walks his dog several times a day, and he looks bewildered by the rushing traffic going by. I see him having to step up onto the lawns to avoid cars the same way that my son does when he walks home from Francine Delaney School. I have no issue with JAG homes, and I think Jody's work is very nice, but I have to say that when I went to the public meetings this summer, I was shocked when I learned about the number of homes being proposed that are going to be crammed into this this older neighborhood. So please just consider decreasing the density of this project. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Yes.
Hello, everybody. Doesn't my neighbors rock? I got the best neighborhood. A couple things. I really liked your questions that you asked. Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Deidre Duffy, and I live on Craggy Avenue. And several of you asked very good questions about this plan, so I can see that you're thinking about it as well as we've been thinking about it. I am confused on this public access issue. I would like that to be clearly defined, because it's like when and if, and I do not want to see the development have access to the Falconhurst Preserve before, and then the rest of us not have access. So when that public access is granted to the public, I would like it, granted to the developers, then I would like to see us be able to take advantage of that park. We don't have a park. We have to cross Haywood to go down to Vermont. So that's one thing. The other thing is Mark had replied to an email I sent. I don't know if you all read these emails, but I appreciate that you did. And he said, why don't you talk about some of these points that I had made, which is various things about the density and such that my neighbors have addressed. So I tried to negotiate. One point I was able to get across, Jody and I had a conversation today actually, that he was willing to, he could see putting up fences as a boundary between the lots and the Falconhurst Preserve as a way to delineate, so that I'm thinking people might make soccer fields in the backyard going right onto, not real soccer fields, but you know, I mean that they will spill out their lots into the preserve, and so some way to delineate the boundary between the lots and the Falconhurst Preserve. So he mentioned that he would be willing to do some fence rails on the edge. I don't know if that needs to be in the plan, how that would, but anyway, okay. So the other thing, I'm disappointed there was no other room for negotiation, no minimizing of the lots, no money to give to the neighborhood, even though they're going to make a ton of money. If you guys approve all these variances, they're going to save a ton of money by not having to grade as much, to not have to put as much pavement, to being allowed to develop all smush like that. And I think they should at least contribute to the neighborhood. They weren't willing to negotiate with me, but I think they will with you. So I'm going to leave it at that. And I think phase 2 is the part that most of us are concerned about, just for your information. Phase 1 accesses onto Louisiana. There's a sidewalk there, and it's not as crazy as Craigie Road. So thank you for your deep consideration of this matter. Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Maggie, that's about to beep.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Michael Conley. I live on Craigie Avenue. I want to thank all of you for coming out and touring the property, and I want to thank you for responding to emails as you have. I just want to talk about the process. Very, very frustrating for us. It feels like we don't know what's going on. You know, I think going forth, you know, I just see all this infill going after one neighborhood after the other and getting people ticked off, and because we don't know what's up, we don't know who to ask, we don't know. Sometimes we've got conflicting information even from the city. We've hounded the staff. You know, we've wasted a lot of your staff time because we don't know who to ask. We've been all over the map, and we've all been trying to do it. And I would really like to think that you could do better, and I hope you will challenge yourself to come up with a process that would address these infills and make a website, something on the website about it, or have a packet of information, or have a single point of contact, or something that's going to help as you go forth. And this infill is going to happen all over the place. Why get everybody in an uproar all over town, one community at a time? The things that you have to figure out, you know, the planning and zoning, the dates of everything, the timelines, the traffic, the permits, wastewater, greenways, setbacks, on and on and on. It's just daunting for regular citizens to have to figure this stuff out. So that's my main point. A big thing is we don't know the right questions to ask. If you don't ask the right question, nobody tells you the right question to ask. I think somehow or another communities would be a lot more settled down about this if there was some, I don't know, standard questions that you might consider as this infill's coming to your neighborhood or something like that. Maybe a flow chart, because the whole planning and zoning commission thing first, and it just rolls. And if we just had a flow chart or something to go by that was very obvious, it would really help us out. And we have a ton of experts right back here that have been going up against this constantly for a few months. Even the delay for the last 2 weeks, we've come up with new information. That's how hard it is. You know, we weren't ready 2 weeks ago. We found new information just recently. So I think we would be happy to share with y'all if y'all want to know anything about what maybe could help the process in particular. Please ask and help the other neighborhoods going forth. And I just want to say, too, one more thing aside from all this is when the Armory property does come up, we need a park really bad north of Haywood. Just keep that in mind. If we could slice off a little of the back end of that place, it'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Did I see a hand over here? Anyone else? Are you, we're still doing the public hearing part. Do you want to?
I'm sorry, I didn't realize I needed to.
It looked like is there anyone else? Yeah, let's finish up this part before we. That's okay.
I'm Lane Reed, live on Blue Ridge Avenue, own Image 420 screen printing. I know it all comes down to math and money. These guys have spent money, it's going to be developed. If they could just decrease the size, increase the cost of the awesome houses that they build, they're nice houses, they'll sell. If you look at the green page that Alan had that you couldn't see because of the sheen, and look at the layout of the neighborhood and how far apart the houses are, and then look at this in comparison to that, it's too much. The road, Craggy, is 18 feet wide, supposed to be 22. It's too tight as it is. Increase by 90 cars a day. It's just too much. It takes me 45 minutes to get home from 420 Haywood Road to 83 Blue Ridge every day at 5. I do better if I wait till 6. I can get there in 15 to 20 minutes. So just if you could just increase the size of the lot would be great.
Anyone else? Okay. All right. You all wanted an opportunity. Okay, so remind me about the time period for the response from the developer. Do we have a time period?
It's up to you.
Okay.
The public hearing's still open for the developer response?
Yes, you can keep the public hearing open for that purpose. And then, yeah, it's up to you. You have discretion.
Maggie was scolding me on the opening there.
Well, with an applicant,
friendly reminder.
The rules say there's 10, but the council always has the option to keep it as long as you need to have your questions answered by the applicant. That's within your right.
All right. Do you want to?
Hello, Mayor and members of council. My name is Mike Figuera, one of the developers and also owner of Mosaic Realty, and I live at 175 Morningside Drive in West Asheville. And I was coming up here to, one, see if you had any questions after the community spoke. Also, wanted to just let you know that as we approach developing this project, balance was one of our key driving forces, and we know you can appreciate that, because as elected officials, you're asked to consider different balances every day, and not everything is a perfect project. You know, not everything is a perfect decision. A lot of times you're weighing competing interests, and what we've done with this project is taken all of the competing interests in mind when developing the site plan. We think we've done as best a job possible at striking a balance between density, preserving green space, pedestrian connectivity, minimizing grading impact, and providing a project that we hope the community will appreciate once it's developed. I've done a couple of these in West Asheville now, one Hudson Street Cottages, which I lived in after I developed, and that was a conditional zoning, and another one called Gaia. The Gaia was by right because it was already multifamily, but the neighborhood opposed it, and Hudson Street Cottages was opposed by the neighborhood, and afterwards the neighbors came and thanked us for the project because it enhanced the neighborhood. We understand that people are reluctant to change, but our goal is to develop something that's more beautiful than what we have now. And with that, if you have any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer them for you.
Does anyone have any questions of?
There's phase 1, phase 2, there's this trail that cuts through the middle. Can you kind of walk me through some timetables here? When the stream trail will be available? Is phase 1, how far apart is construction on phase 1 from construction on phase 2? Just kind of help me understand the timetable.
Great question, and our target date for breaking ground on going vertical on phase 1 on Louisiana is May 5th. We've got Cinco de Mayo. We are, as far as the trail goes, we would like to get started on that soon, but we also realize that this is part of the larger conversation that we're having with the community, and so we've hired the Asheville Design Center. They submitted a proposal, and we signed the proposal and paid them already. After this process ends, if we get approval tonight, then we will go forward with a neighborhood design charrette for coming up with all the stakeholders, including Parks and Rec, because you own the land, for the Falconhurst Preserve and for the trail that cuts through there to talk about what the community's desires are, their concerns, and try to address that in a holistic manner. So I wish I had a clear answer for you, but what we're trying to do is...
The next step would be the charrette before
the next step
any
is the
establishment
charrette,
of
and we
a-
are ready to get going. Chris Joyelle from the Asheville Design Center was planning on making it tonight, but he sent us an email a few hours ago saying that he was running a fever and very sick, and he didn't want to get everybody here sick. So he has a letter of support that he's drafted, and I'm happy to share it with you if you'd like.
You've got a question? Was that it, Gordon? I'm sorry. Yep, okay.
More about the trail, and Mr. Tuck had a drawing of the specific trail alignment. Can we pull that back up? It was the one David Tuck showed us. There we go. So, Mr. Figueroa, I don't know if you can talk. When we contemplate an easement that would be granted by the developer right away to the city, can you point on there with your finger what that easement corridor would
Sure, I'm going to do this, and then if I get it wrong, David, will you please get up and correct me? So it's going to come, there's an intersection right here where our property kind of comes out on Tanglewood, and it's going to follow the riparian corridor that we're protecting as open space, and then curve around here, and then it's going to kind of loop back in, so we create this flow. And then ideally, if we have neighborhood support and city support, the Falconhurst natural area is opened up as green space to the community, and it will connect into there. But right now, we're kind of bringing it up to the edge.
Well, let me try to propose some specificity, because I think this has been not specific enough yet, that a condition to this conditional zoning would be the developer, you, granting an easement to the city for that greenway along where you drew it with your finger, and the design that would be worked out through Asheville Design Center must be acceptable to the city, and that in regard to the accessing of Falconhurst Preserve, that it would be subject to approval whenever the rest of the infrastructure may be built out. It would be up to the subject to the approval of the city when that would be allowed. And what I'm trying to do here is offer predictability for the neighborhood about both the certainty of access, but also not getting into the Falconhurst Preserve prematurely before facilities down there are acceptable.
I think I'm pretty sure I understand what you're going after, but I think our concern would be that there's a pretty steep grade there, and if we've met with the Parks and Rec Department and the Building Department on this, and they, depending on how we word this right now, we may run into ADA compliance issues, which they advised us to avoid because we can't do it because of the topography. We're pretty sure we could get a technical infeasibility variance, but I want to make sure we don't back ourselves into a corner. They suggested that we build with natural materials, so because they think that would be a way to not have to meet ADA compliance, and then as a second phase, if access is opened up through the armory, that's a much more on-grade entrance into the greenway. But it's just, I think you all have been out to the property and see this steepness of the topography. So I would just not want to pass anything tonight that then backs us into having to do a ridiculously long ramp that crisscrosses.
Well, let me address that. I would be very reluctant to support this unless there is a condition in this approval tonight that guarantees a greenway easement for the city down there. Now, if the alignment is not, we can generally commit to a greenway subject to approval by the city later, but there must be an easement.
Subject to acceptance, I think is what you mean.
Subject to it being acceptable to the city, but what I'm not willing to do is begin negotiating a greenway easement 2 months or 6 months or 5 years.
Oh, sure. Our intention is to provide a right-of-way for connectivity through the property, similar to what Jody did at Davenport Park, where there's a, deeded in there's a right-of-way to be turned over to the city. David asked if he could speak on this, so maybe he's got more clarity to answer. I see what you're saying, and I think we're aligned and on the same page.
Keep in mind, what we're after here is specific language, and I'm going to ask the city attorney to comment on that before we're done with this conversation right here. But we have to be specific.
So, okay. Go ahead.
Well, just conceptually, we were just, as lawyers, we're making eyes at each other about how you would do that.
Right. I mean, I think that right now that you're supposed to develop in substantial compliance with your site plan, and that trail appears on your site plan, correct?
Right.
It's right there.
Okay. So the question is, how would you get an easement, and how would you get an easement before you know exactly where it's going to land on the ground?
Or if you want it, and if there are...
Or if you want it. And I think you talked about an offer. You can do an offer of dedication that the city can or cannot decide to accept, and that condition can be written in that manner. And I think that you can also potentially word the condition to be a trail at or around the location that appears at the site plan. I think it's probably a good idea to define the width of it, but that it has to be in such a location, in such a manner that it complies with state and federal regulations or ADA, and that it would be subject to final approval by the city. I mean, I think there's a way you could word that condition where at the end of the day, if we didn't want it, we didn't have to take it, and that you didn't have to come back and say, oh my gosh, I cannot follow that exact, trail because we ran into something and we can't legally build it that way. So that would be, it might take a little work to get the wording exactly right, and I may not be able to do that, right at the table, and I may need some assistance, but I do think there's a way to get it done. And you might want to talk about where it starts and where it ends, because I think it starts at Tanglewood, and right now it's ending. I think we might want to define where it starts and where it ends, so that it's not so vague that when this happens, we don't have any way to find it on the ground. So,
well, where you're headed is just fine, from my standpoint. But I think that the specific wording of a condition tonight is also important. Because we're not voting on this 2 weeks from now. We're voting on it tonight.
Oh, I think we can get it in theory, and
then by the time
it gets signed, have the exact language. But actually, I can probably, between the two of us, I'll work on that as we speak. How about that?
Did you have any other?
Not for the moment.
Okay.
While I'm up here, I just wanted to bring to your attention that we have a couple letters of support for the project that I forgot to mention when I was up here earlier. We have one from the Western North Carolina Green Building Council. I could read a little bit of it to you, but it doesn't look like that's necessary, so if you want this for your records. We also have one from Kieran Rowe, and Kieran has worked in land conservation for 20 years. He's an executive director with Carolina Mountain Land Conservancy who's supporting the project. We have one from Asheville on Bikes, who's supporting this project as well. We have one from Riverlink who's supporting the low-impact development. And as Mike mentioned, we have one from the Asheville Design Center that was sent to us this evening.
You'll just pass them to Maggie, and she can pass them around. That would be great.
Before I sit back down, there was a question about density, and we do have a precedence. When you look at Davenport Park, this is exactly what we're using as a model for Craggy Park. So we have these small lots, we have the green space, we have preserved areas, we have a stream restoration area. So you have a model right here in Asheville. And not only do you have a model, but we are often asked to go to conferences to talk about low-impact development. And just recently, we went to the North Carolina Low Impact Development Summit in Raleigh, and there were 2 projects that were asked to talk about to represent the mountains. One was Davenport Park, and one was Sierra Nevada. And so there's a lot of interest in this type of development, and it's seen as a model not just for Asheville, but beyond Asheville.
Okay, Council, that was the response from the developer at the public hearing. I think we've heard from everyone, unless there's anyone who wants to speak that didn't already speak or didn't already yield their time. Going once, going twice. All right, I will close the public hearing. And hopefully we won't need to reopen it, but yep.
A couple of things that kind of came up during this discussion. One, there was mention of closing Druid. Druid Street is a street that comes from Patton Avenue that cuts into this neighborhood. I believe it comes into Mitchell, and then folks kind of wind through the neighborhood as part of a cut through. And that conversation feeds into a broader conversation around our Haywood Road traffic study and parking study that's underway right now. And that all the neighbors in Falconhurst neighborhood, as well as more broadly, are going to be able to participate in. I know that Jeff is really involved in that. And that question of what to do about Druid is going to be a part of that conversation. Do I have that right, Jeff?
Yes, sir. Jeff Moore, City Traffic Engineer. In order to close a road like that, it would take a much broader conversation to make sure that we're able to keep the connectivity we need, et cetera. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question.
Yeah, I was just confirming that was a part of the process that's happening now.
Yes, sir. It would be a much bigger. We haven't discussed internally closing that, but it's something we could certainly pursue. But it would have to meet goals. It would have to be.
I get it. That there's a lot of talk to be had around
yes,
it, but
sir,
that it's right now a part of the conversation is just what I'm confirming.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
I also really appreciate what Susan Spies had to say tonight about what she called neighborhood repurposing, which in my mind I translate to what we're dealing with right now, which is balancing the density goals of the council and the density needs of the city with the livability desires of the community that already lives here and the folks who will come after. And so this project gives us another opportunity to examine density and livability. And when I hear really constructive ideas like Susan brought forward, one of the things that I was going to ask Councilman Pelley is if that was something that the Neighborhood Advisory Committee might be able to take up some of these ideas to be able to float this more around town and work with staff to see if any of this stuff might have legs.
Sure. And to that point, the Neighborhood Advisory Committee is doing a Festival of Neighborhoods on Sunday, March 15th, at which they'll be doing workshops on how neighborhoods can more effectively address these type of growth and development issues here. I think you make a good point there. I think the challenge that I've seen here is that there's a lot of concerns expressed here tonight, many legitimate concerns, and what it's done is it's begun a discussion within the neighborhood, the Falconhurst neighborhood, of how they want to grow and how they want to evolve. And I would encourage you, no matter what the outcome is tonight, to continue that discussion and continue to come together to kind of talk about not only what you don't want, but what you do want for your community. And so I invite anybody interested to come to AB Tech on Sunday the 15th of March to participate in it, because again, there'll be workshops that talk about the very issues you're addressing here tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate the time and consideration that the development group has put into looking at pervious surfaces and looking at maintaining the integrity of the stream there, and of making sure that the stormwater management. I know that the Davenport project, for instance, y'all did a phenomenal job and are doing some really innovative work around stormwater. And as a city, it's something we're keenly interested in right now, and so your willingness to innovate there is really appreciated. The access to the creation of the greenway, the idea that we can get to smaller lot sizes, so we can, especially at a place like this, have more green space and preserve more trees, while at the same time addressing what is clearly a housing shortage. This isn't necessarily the housing that I would be advocating for, in that it doesn't fall within any affordability ranges. But we do know that the housing stock is at such high demand within the city that even this type of housing can help to stabilize the market. And the fact that you're going to be coming in and having it green built and have the support of the Green Building Council for this development really speaks to me. And this idea of smaller lots is something I think we're going to be looking at more broadly going forward. So I plan to support this tonight.
Yeah, I just read the letters from the Green Building Council, Kieran Rowe, Asheville on Bikes, and Riverlink, and while they support elements of this project, none of them that I read them quickly right now, actually endorse the whole project. The Green Building Council likes the fact that they're going to be healthy built and that it's going to use low-impact development methods. Asheville on Bikes likes the idea that more density, access, and that sort of. Anyway, they're not necessarily endorsing this many units or this size lots. They're endorsing elements of it. And what I'm noticing here is the thing. What the developer is telling us is that they tried to fit this in a pleasant way, in an environmentally responsible way, and I agree that they're doing that, in line with the bottom line they need to get to. I mean, they want to make a lot of money, obviously, and the question, of course, is how much money do they want to make? And building 20 houses on this same parcel, they would make less money, obviously. Building 80 houses, they could make more money if they could somehow squeeze them all in. I think that the ask for this change, this conditional zoning, is really to facilitate getting more money out of the property. I mean, the truth is, with the plan that one of the speakers presented with the other arrangement of lots, wouldn't work very well because of the terrain here. It would be much more expensive to develop them in that way. So I don't think it's our job here to necessarily facilitate someone making more money. I think we need to protect the green space, we need to protect the neighborhood, and I'm not convinced at all that it almost smacks of greenwashing, and that's a really negative, and I don't mean it quite that way, but you could do low impact development and have fewer houses. And I speak to that from this position. I lived off the grid for 22 years with a real simple solar panel system and water from a cistern. I sacrificed a lot to try to make a green impact, to minimize my impact. Where I live now in the city, I've spent a lot of money putting solar panels on my house, upgrading the insulation, a lot of things that don't necessarily pay off in dollars, but they're better for the planet. And so to me, if a developer wants to be better for the planet, they can take a hit and not try to maximize the dollar value. So I'm going to vote against this.
Anyone else?
I'll go. I intend to support this project, and the three things that do that primarily for me. First, I want to make sure everybody understands that the only reason we're voting about whether to let this go forward or not is because it's a conditional zoning application. If a different developer were to come along and comply with the existing zoning, they could build under what we call use by right, and there would not be veto power up here to shelve that. One of the speakers suggested that perhaps the next developer that comes along, would do something that would be a better fit. And I think that is a very risky gamble. I think that that there's a good chance that, like nearly every developer out there, the next developer will want to make this work financially. And I don't think that is the best call in the interest of the neighborhood. I don't think it's the best call in the interest of the environment. The protections to water quality and leaving woodlands intact in this proposal are really important, I think. I don't think 90% of the style of development that goes on in subdivisions in this area would do nearly that. And another angle, the final angle that is important to me is that the demand for housing is a general demand on this area without regard to the city limits. And the people that would live in these houses, if we don't do them, are going to find housing elsewhere. And to the extent we shove housing outside the city limits into the county where the zoning regulations are much less restrictive, we're doing something much worse, which is adding to suburban sprawl. And so from the standpoint of duty to the environment and the ultimate fragmentation of open space, natural land, and farmland, that is what is at risk out in the areas outside the city limits, I feel like it's our duty in the city to honor this density orientation we've got, so that as a much broader community, in fact, a Western North Carolina region, our land uses are balanced, and we're doing our best to protect very natural areas, most of which are outside the town. So those are comments about where I come down on it. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I also intend to support the motion here. I'm sympathetic to the argument that maybe less houses here in this subdivision would have a less of an impact, but the reality is if we reduce this from 45 to 35 houses, you still have to put in the road system, you still have to put in the stormwater system, you still have to do all the improvements that are going to be required, however many homes there. And, I think we could, argue about what's a profit, what's a suitable profit rate of return for an investor. We're not privy to that. We can't factor that into the decision here. But as Councilman Hunt, Vice Mayor Hunt said, we do know about the situation here where we don't want to be promoting sprawl elsewhere. We do know that there's great demand for housing within our city here. So I think based on the well thought out plan here, it's not a perfect world, but it's a pretty good plan here about the availability that this is eventually going to open up the Falconhurst Preserve for the whole community to be able to use. Leads me to support this.
I find myself very much in agreement. I think that having watched the design team with other projects and the builders, this is a quality product, and that's not something we're likely to get to just throw it open to other. If they can't do this project and they were to back out of it, I agree with Councilman Hunt. The difficulties you might find with it would be far worse to build to the level that it could be built as a use by right. So I think this is, much as people feel very infringed on in that neighborhood, I think you at the end of the process will be better for it and than it could be. So I'm supportive as well.
I am interested eventually about having a conversation regarding the gentleman's comments about the process and the confusion about the process. We have now heard that from a couple of communities. We've had, similar challenges in Kenilworth as well. And I think where you find more dense neighborhoods currently in existence tends to be where we hear that comment about the confusion in the process and the speed of the process. So just, Council, when we finally have a planning director, a permanent planning director, we have a long list of things that she or he we would like them to tackle. So just adding to that list, I'm curious about, I know we have legal requirements in terms of how quickly the city has to act on an application, and we're bound by the process in terms of it goes to P&Z, and then within so many days it goes to city council. So there's limitations in terms of notice and the timeline, but I mean, that doesn't mean that there couldn't be a flow chart or some kind of pamphlet, you know, your neighborhood's experiencing a rezoning application, here's what to expect kind of a thing. So that, I would be interested in just clarifying the process, opening up communications in a better way. I just wanted to make that observation. All right, we have, we don't have a motion, we just have a lot of people saying things, but we need...
I have a couple of questions, just, we've been working on this condition, but with respect to condition 20, I guess there were some questions about, as it was written, it was not consented to, but it could either say if there is a grant, they would do it as written, but if there wasn't a grant, it would be in stream enhancement. So I think we need some clarification on what exactly that's going to say, and so council can make a decision, you know, based
Sure.
on.
So Riverlink approached us and asked us if we would be interested in supporting them so they could do a stream restoration. So you need a willing landowner to do a stream restoration when you're pursuing a grant. So the intention is for them to go get funding to build this. The developer provides the property so they can do that. Now, stream restoration is very expensive, and so for the developer to say that we're going to do stream restoration if something falls through with Riverlink is something that we don't want to commit to. So I think we just want to be clear on that. But if that happens and Riverlink cannot get a grant for stream restoration, the developer is committing to do stream enhancements. That means removing invasive exotic plants and putting in new native plants within the stream corridor.
And that's certainly within the spirit of the condition as proposed.
And I think it can be written in such a way that they agree to support restoration, but effectuate enhancement if restoration does not occur?
I think that works.
Okay.
Any other issue with any other condition, wording of any condition?
We have the 20, which will now be potentially be 22.
The Greenway.
Floating around that. I have a couple, I thought, I guess go ahead and read it, but then I had a couple of things that I
And they made a
forgot.
comment too. I just want to clarify. So the trails right now would not be Greenway standard for the city. The Greenway standard for the city is really a 10-foot wide trail. Okay, so we're okay with that. What they will build at this time is more of a pathway or trail, smaller, probably pervious surface.
Similar to what we've seen at Hominy Creek.
Thank you. That's right. So I just want to make sure that's clear. So here's the draft. The property owner will make an offer of dedication of an easement to the city for a trail beginning at Tanglewood Drive, approximating the location shown on the site plan, and terminating at roadway C on the site plan, this is roadway C, designated on the site plan. The trail shall meet city greenway standards and shall follow as nearly as possible the path of such trail as it appears on the site plan. I guess we kind of said that twice. However, final location and design shall comply with all city, state, and federal regulations and shall be subject to final approval by the city. How do we do on that?
There are a couple of tweaks in there. The other thing that I would, so we're going to say greenway standards as opposed to a certain width, but I do think that we need some sort of.
So a general standard for a greenway in the city would be a 10-foot wide pathway.
Okay, because if we're going to make an offer of dedication, then it needs to be described more specifically, I think, than city greenway standards. It probably needs to have, you want to say at least 10? I don't know if that
Generally, it's been 20. In my days on the Greenway Commission, the easement's tended to run about 20 feet so that
You could work on
would
both
have
sides.
shoulders and edges to, some flexibility in there.
Okay. And so a minimum of 20 feet?
Okay.
Again, I'm trying to get it written in there. I don't know exactly what the numbers are. Also, that offer would be on or before a building permit is issued. I'm not sure. There needs to be some sort of a date by which that needs to be done. And then it also needs to be clear that the city has no obligation to accept, which we've pretty much said, but that we may need to write that in just in case something happens. We don't want to agree to accept something that would not be to our standards, that that we could not maintain in a way that we needed to. So.
Robin, I would, one thing that Alan did not say is connectivity to Falconhurst. You described it as going from a public road back to the internal road, but I think the spirit is that it ultimately needs to connect to Falconhurst as well for a future access once Falconhurst is ready.
Mm-hmm. So it's going to have a greenway equivalent of a curb cut, I guess, whatever that is. Right? So you'll have the ability to connect, right? So you'll reserve that area so you won't be developing it, but it will not, you won't be punching through, if you will.
And to be clear, when you said 20 feet, we heard trail width and then we heard 20 feet. So we want to be clear that the trail we're talking about is a greenway trail that could be 10 feet, but the easement that you're looking for would be 20 feet.
Okay, yeah.
And we would want to take it to this location here because we might want to reserve this space to do something, and we don't want to tie that up with an easement. So we would take it all the way to where it abuts the Falconhurst natural area, so you can have that access to the Smith Mill Greenway.
Yeah.
You've got my condition where it abuts the
Falconhurst natural area.
right.
We probably want, a drawing with the highlighted area attached to the CZ, I would
In
think.
this area, if we don't have exactly 20 feet, we wouldn't want to have to adjust our property line. So I think if this is where it goes, we would want to make the easement work within the property boundaries we have, and just make sure that we're going to set that within all the open space that's available. So we can use this, either this side or this side, doesn't matter to us, but it's going to be, I can tell you right now, it's going to have to be on this side.
I have this, and I have we can say this is our.
Well, you don't have to, okay, you can do it right now, but.
Do you want me to?
I don't. My understanding was you're not able to locate it on the ground at this time.
Well, but you wanted to use it as an approximate location.
Right.
I think we're agreeing that there may be some movement in it, but we need to have a general concept of.
I think it's on the site plan already, though.
Well, I think your language is fine. Right here.
No, but we can add another drawing, but I think it probably needs to be consistent with what they put on the site plan already.
It's this, but not all of it. It branches off to the right. Anyway, because after you explain that you want it to terminate where it stops abutting, yeah, there you go. There.
Okay. We can make that work, and you can offer a full 20 feet for the length of.
I don't know if the distance between here and there is 20 feet.
I think it's a little less at those lots. Right through there, it might be a little shy of 20 feet.
So
we'll make amends for that. Can we make a what lot numbers are those?
It's better in some easements I work with. Yeah.
So lots 31 and 30 are the two that are butted by a narrower section through there, and we could make accounting for that.
Okay, you highlighted this. What you just highlighted was what basically appears on your site plan, but you're just showing exactly where it terminates at this time, where your easement would terminate. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you can offer 20 feet except for the area
Got another highlighter.
between
Orange.
certain lots. Is that correct?
It's
these two lots.
Are they numbered?
And we might be able to do that. I just can't tell you right now that 20 feet is sufficient, and then I don't want it to become a problem.
What will be, we need some kind of a number, no less than 18, 15?
I don't feel comfortable with giving a number and then having it become an issue, and then having a lot that becomes smaller and then having that be problematic. Is that going to be an issue?
Well, I think we have to have some idea about what the right-of-way width is going to be.
At least 10 feet, at least, no less than 20 feet where space allows, but in no case less than 10 feet.
Perfect.
No, I'm good with that. Did you
That
get
works.
that?
Oh, now we got the big maps.
I think we got it, Jeff.
I promise no traffic numbers.
Did you get that?
Because that's in the rear
Oh.
setback. We could say 10 feet comfortably.
Yeah.
So I think what we said was,
It really is.
Right.
This is a dangerous.
Just the most specific condition that the city of Asheville has ever worded.
No.
I'm sorry about that.
Yes.
all right, we're in agreement about what the,
I'd like to point out one other thing, and Jeff Moore is...
it better not be a snag.
The Greenway Division is now a part of transportation since it's a transportation feature.
Yes.
And so Jeff pointed out a point here that if the Greenway went, and we're still on the plan here, the Greenway went from Tanglewood here and went straight across this side and didn't cross the creek, it might provide a level shelf there right above the creek and tie into city property. It just might tie into city property.
At the Armory.
Armory is a more direct route.
We'll give them both to us. So
We don't, but our lease with the Armory does not allow public access now. That is a potential thing for the future, but if we stub it into the Armory,
Yeah.
it could be a road to nowhere.
Okay.
And, we can always, if things change with the Armory, there can be a negotiation to realign the easement later.
To go that way.
Okay. I think that would work because the developers would love to see a greenway in the future in this location.
Well, and I think it's on the site plan, so it's got to be built regardless of whether we take it or not. So there's going to be a trail there. I think what this condition does is it gives it the ability for us to actually take it and make it a part of our greenway system, should they be able to construct it that way. And what about the time?
Maybe can we say that when we get into this phase of the development, 'cause we're not quite sure when this all may happen, so I would hate to lock it down to the Louisiana side.
We can enforce it.
With phase 2.
And again, it's up to council. At or before a building permits are issued for the first home in phase 2?
Or for the infrastructure in phase 2. For the infrastructure in phase 2.
That, however you want to do it, I just think if we don't put a time in there that you can be, they could be all the way up, and I think you really want to offer it sometime before they start,
I don't even have Can I also get a point of clarification? The developers are planning to build a trail, again, to a 5-foot standard. We're not planning on building a greenway trail in the future. If the city wants to build it, you'll have the easement to build the greenway.
Right, the easement will be in the
Wanted to
nature
make
of
sure.
the,
Okay.
greenway standards.
Yeah, you're not committing.
Did you have?
So what do we say, at or before infrastructure
If we're good.
is installed in phase 2?
Whenever they
Yes.
get that haggle down.
Are we good?
Oh my God.
has a specific period of time and whether to accept or reject it. A year?
Year. We need a year.
This,
It's up to council.
A year from the time that it's defined, which is driven by the permit for phase 2. A year past that is what you're saying.
Structure and phase 2.
Jan's ready to make a motion. Are you ready?
What happens if we accept it, though? I mean, is there an expectation?
Okay.
We don't have to build it. We can
I think we'll have to weigh that at the
Yeah,
time.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay, are you ready?
The sausage is complete.
The sausage has been
That
made.
was ugly.
I have one question, I'm sorry, so acceptance within a year of? Okay, got it.
And it's one of the only files that's not corrupted on this end of the table.
Yeah,
I will read the motion. Mayor, I move to approve the conditional zoning request for Craggy Park on Louisiana Avenue and Craggy Avenue from residential single-family high-density district to residential single-family high-district conditional zoning RS8CZ with the conditions to lot size, lot widths, setbacks, and sidewalk waivers for certain areas based on the master plan, and find that the request is reasonable, is in the public interest, and is consistent with the comprehensive plan and other adopted plans in the following ways. Infill development is encouraged in areas close to shopping, employment, recreation, and near transit corridors. 2, riparian areas will be protected in the plan as open space which is adjacent to city parkland. 3, the proposed lots are sufficiently sized for single-family use. 4, the conditional rezoning request allows flexibility for development standards which are reviewed based on specific site plans and details of the proposal.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, that concludes that item. We have 2 other public hearings on the public hearings agenda. Do you want to press on, or do you want to break and do the closed session agenda?
Closed session.
Closed session? I have 3 closed sessions, yes?
I'm good.
Okay, ready?
I move that the Asheville City Council go into closed session for the following reasons. 1, to prevent disclosure of information that is privileged and confidential pursuant to the laws of North Carolina or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes. The law that makes the information privileged and confidential is NC General Statutes 143-318.10.3. The statutory authorization is contained in NC General Statute 143-318.11A1. 2, to consult with an attorney employed by the city about matters with respect to which the attorney-client privilege between the city and its attorney must be preserved, including a lawsuit involving the following parties: City of Asheville versus Robert Frost. The statutory authorization is contained in NC General Statutes 143-318.11A3.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we will be in closed session until 7:45. This is not good. Okay, the next item is item B, a public hearing to consider the issuance of a conditional use permit for property located at 40 Cox Avenue for Buncombe County's Health and Human Services Building addition and parking structure. Anyone who thinks they even might talk during this item, please come up and be sworn in.
I'd like to ask you about that.
Oh, my God.
Now, if you're here just as their attorney. No, you don't need to be sworn.
Thank God we got it. I'm just busy keeping the SS downtown.
Okay, and Mr. Glines is going to begin by...
Thank you, Mayor, members of City Council, members of the public. You are being asked to consider today a request for a conditional use permit for an addition to the Health and Human Services Building located at 40 Cox Avenue and for the construction of a 650-space parking structure. This process is a conditional use permit because it's a government use in the CBD.
Say that again.
It's a government use in the CBD.
And that's why it's a...
It's a conditional use permit.
Okay.
Yeah, in our UDO. The site is, this is an Exhibit A map. The site has 4 frontages on rights-of-way or streets. This is Cox Avenue here, this is Aston Street, Buncombe Street, and Sears Alley, and it's covering the whole block. It's about 1.91 acres. Here's an aerial of the same, and once again, this is Aston, this is Cox Avenue. This is the existing Health and Human Services building. It's about 71,000 square feet. It's the old Sears property, and this is a surface lot. This is the Sears Alley, and the Sears Alley provides access into the subject area and will be a two-way movement when this improvement happens. This, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. So the proposal is for an expansion of the Health and Human Services building, the existing building here, with a 69,000 square foot, 7-story addition. And this will provide frontage right on Cox Avenue and provide a wider sidewalk, fenestration facing the street, and it lines, if you will, as a liner building, but an occupied building, the structure behind it, which is the parking structure. And that is a 8-tier, 650 space deck. Excuse me. The access to this property and to this proposal will be primarily from Sears Alley, a two-way movement. Enter and exit, and then sort of circulate around the parking deck area. I have some other images here I'll share with you. This is showing some fenestration, some landscaping improvements, and so there will be new street trees on Cox Avenue, street trees on Sears Alley, street trees on Buncombe Street, bearing the utilities here, and then some improvements to Aston Street to add some tree wells there. Showing it just a little more detail, some of that movement, and this is off-site, but it is Commerce Street. There is a underground water line or a storm drain that will be sort of intervention there and sort of moved out and directed down Cox Avenue. I've got some images here. I'm going to zoom back out.
Alan, are these all part of the application?
They are.
Oh, okay.
Part of the record as well.
Okay.
This is the ground floor. This is existing Health and Human Services, the addition. There's a major stair tower and elevator exiting and access to the garage. More of the building. The existing building stops at about 3 stories, and the Health and Human Services continues on for a few more floors. The building itself was reviewed for compliance with the CBD requirements for downtown design review, which is also one of the conditional use findings. And the existing building is here. You can see that the 3-story building is sort of a brick modern style. And then the newer structure is 7-story stall, has a base, a middle, and a cap element here. And the stair tower itself has a sort of more of a modern glass, lots of light, sort of fenestration there. When the project was reviewed by the Downtown Commission, there were comments to provide some soft lighting at night for the garage structure itself. It'll meet our lighting ordinance, but it'll provide a light wash of light along the structure, along Sears Alley and the portion here in front of Cox Avenue. The proposal was reviewed by the Downtown Commission. Mr. Davis was able to excuse himself from that meeting, and so he did not hear the proceedings for that at that hearing itself or that review. But the commission did vote to approve with a condition, with several recommendations that would move forward to you all, not binding on City Council, but they asked that City Council consider that the county add public restrooms to the facility, and also that public use for the parking garage be provided by the county after hours for public use. This project was reviewed by the Technical Review Committee. There was not a lot of comments from Technical Review, but it was approved with conditions, and Buncombe County has agreed that including the TRC staff report as a condition of approval, if this is approved by you all, that they're agreeable to that as a condition. And that's really all I have for this. And if you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to answer them for you.
Questions?
Alan, you said that I guess it was the sewer or storm water had to be dug up on Commerce Street coming down that way and rerouted. There's any opportunity at that point to do those power lines and some of the utilities sticking up out there? Would be a great opportunity. And if we get some partnership with those folks next door. And
I'm aware of that concern. I think I'm going to see if I have it on one of these drawings here, but the water, the stormwater line it's closer to the building side on that block, and the power lines are really on the opposite side, adjacent to the parking structure itself. So it would have to be in probably our capital improvement plan, and it's not budgeted right now. So I don't know if it can be concurrent to that, or what exactly that would cost, but it would be extra expense, and it's really outside of this project.
Okay.
In some ways. I didn't see that plan. I'm sorry. I must have.
Okay, any other questions? No. Great.
Okay, and Alan, Maggie has a copy of the application as an exhibit and part of the record?
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor, Council, good evening. Michael Frew, Buncombe County Senior Staff Attorney, here today on behalf of my client, Buncombe County. We're just here to ask for your approval of the conditional use permit as applied for with the conditions stated by Mr. Glines from the TRC, which the county has agreed to. I'm just here to kick it off. I'm here today with John Creighton, Assistant County Manager and Planning Director, as well as Keith Hargrove, our architect. Hopefully they won't need me, but if you need me or have any questions, I'll be glad to pitch in at any time.
Thank you.
Well, while we've got you up here, really great that the county's chosen to expand here rather than relocate this building. I think that a lot of folks are real pleased about that decision.
Yes, sir. There was a lot of pull on that and a lot of discussion.
It was a big decision to make, and a big commitment to make to all the people that are served there to remain at probably the best, most accessible location that you could have. So I'm really appreciative for it. As far as the parking garage goes, it's my understanding that the proposal is to have 650 spaces, and that would also include public access to the parking garage?
Well, for details, let me kick that out over to the architect and Mr. Creighton.
Great.
Thanks.
We got an email from Kathy Ball about parking. I don't know if you saw that.
Madam Mayor, council members, I'm John Creighton. I won't go into the details since Alan's already talked about the size of the building and the parking deck. But we do plan on having the building accessed by the general public for parking. Right now, we do not anticipate doing long-term parking. Just have to see how things work out. Also, you get into some bond issues as far as tax exempt and non-tax exempt. We start renting too many spaces. But our plans are right now to proceed and have public use of the general public use of the deck during the day.
And John, the county's parking decks generally are available well into the night. They don't close at 10 p.m. or
no.
They're self-serve, exit at night, but
that's right.
Okay.
So it will be accessible to the public at night?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Right now, we're looking at privatizing our decks and letting somebody else run them. So I'm sure that there's an opportunity to make $1 or whatever.
They will.
They will. And I think that makes it even better as far as that usage for the general public.
Let us know how that works out with your exploration of that opportunity.
As Alan mentioned, both entrance and exits will be on Sears Alley. We plan to have Sears Alley to be 2-lane, so both directions. I think that'll give the opportunity for the public to come out onto Cox or to Buncombe, which in turn would get them down to Aston and allow them to go back on Cox through a red light, or to go all the way over to Biltmore Avenue and to go north and south. So I think that that adds some good parts to it. I just want to talk a little bit about human services and the aspect. Right now we have 440 employees that work in that building. We've pretty much cut all our training space out to make it into cubicle space, and we're just in dire need of additional space. Currently, as Alan mentioned, the building is 71,300 square feet. We lease currently about 13,300 square feet in other locations in the city, and also house another 39,000 square feet of HHS services in downtown buildings that the county owns. We currently lease 350 parking spaces. We hope to give most of those up, but if something happened tomorrow that we would lose that parking, I think you're all aware that we would be in dire straits. We've been in the business before of trying to shuttle employees back and forth, and it gets very expensive. I think the demand for human services continue to rise. I think when you look at statistics over the last 7 years, that food stamp assistance has increased 106%, and Medicaid has gone up 29%. 1 in 5 residents in Buncombe County receive food assistance, and majority of those are working adults, the elderly, and the disabled. And 1 in 5 residents of Buncombe County also receive Medicaid. And those are children, disabled adults, and people that live in nursing homes. So there's a great demand. Last year we had over 100,000 clients, not people with them, but clients come through the front door of this building. So, I mean, we do a lot of services in that area. And I think the one statistic that's real interesting, that 47% of that 100,000 live within a radius of 5 miles of that building. So I think that was one of the determining factors that, okay, we want to try to keep it central. And I think the real important thing is that we're very fortunate that we've got a large building on the property, but we also have enough property to allow us basically to double the size of that building and to build a large parking deck. So I think that we're real fortunate that back 27, 28 years ago when we built or purchased the old Sears building, at that time we thought, well, you know, we'll never outgrow this building, but just those services continue to grow and grow. I would like to now ask Keith Hargrove to come up and give you some elevation views, better of the building from different perspectives. Thank you.
Mayor and Council, I'm Keith Hargrove, and I'm glad to be here tonight. I'll give you the once around here on the building, and we all can recognize where we're at. Cox Avenue running north-south, Sears Alley as it exists, and Commerce Street. Basically, as you swing around to the southwest, looking back up the street, that's the Capitol Center, the tall building. Adjacent to that is the building that's over the Wine House, and then adjacent to that is the Thirsty Monk. Commerce Street borders those buildings, and then Sears Alley right there, and Aston Street. And of course the transit station roof is right there. There's a crosswalk directly across the street towards the entrance to the downstairs of the existing building. Site plan that Alan had up earlier, as you saw, basically 3 sides of the site will get new sidewalks, trees, sidewalks be widened to meet city requirements, landscaping. Utilities will be cleaned up. We'll come back to a power pole up on Buncombe Street and go underground, get rid of the power poles on Buncombe. Along Cox, the overhead light pole lines are all being removed for fire truck access, and so that'll be cleaned up, and a 10-foot sidewalk, of course. basically this was part of the submission package, and it shows materials of the building. I'm going to skip ahead and we'll talk about that on another image, but we've already discussed that. The building, as Alan mentioned, starts at the lower end or the north side of the upper side, north side of the old Sears building, and continues up to the corner about 20 or 30 feet short of Sears Alley. That's where we plan to do a stair tower, and it's all glass, similar to what we have across the street at the Cox deck, trying to promote that openness and security. Included in that tower is an elevator bank of 2 elevators, and they have glass back elevators so you can actually see from the street into the elevator cabs for, again, security. We were asked at Downtown Commission initially to provide some screening on the deck, and we've shown that on this elevation, which is a recessed areaway that will take you to the ground level of the parking deck, but in reality you would typically go into the stair tower and up the elevators. So the idea with that is openness and to have easily accessible and recognizable. The base of the building is a cast architectural stone with the brick top, and you can see the signage. The idea was to bring and focus people into a new entrance element and bring them in and then connect up on the upper level of the old Sears building, and then it also has an additional level on top. Another view of that, and as you can see, the screening is a perforated stainless steel panel that will screen not only at the areaway part of the deck, but we turned the corner with that and went down Buncombe Street. That stainless steel screening is perforated to allow for the openness on the deck so we don't have to ventilate or have an enclosed motorized garage. And then we used these images to hint at context. Of course, this is looking across currently on a very rainy day, and then the new image of the new building across the street, and then the image of the new building. More context as you stand down below the site. You see the transit center, what will be the temporary entrance into the current building, and then up there you can see the Capitol Center in the distance, and then we plugged our building above that to show the effect on that view up the street. And then back on Buncombe Street, standing on actually Aston, looking up Buncombe Street, the existing store or existing human services building, and then the back of the parking deck, and that is the back of the old bank at the top of Buncombe. And then down below, standing in the back with Commerce Street over to the right, it's a similar view. That is the north-east stair tower, same kind of design as across the street, open, promoting, security. And then a close-up of the entry element. And we were asked also at Downtown Commission Review to consider the building after hours, and part of that was being obviously having visibility into the stair towers. And with the stair towers, there's always egress lighting, so it's lit 24/7 with that egress requirement for egress lighting. And then from within the deck, you usually can see the screening is transparent, but we were also asked to enhance that screening with some lighting from above, which will be flood lighting, LED flood lighting, to just basically brush the deck, a small subtle gesture, and again at the request of an early review at Downtown Commission. And then the view at night from across the street, and the idea that the building will be on occupancy sensors. You still have the requirement for egress lighting just in case somebody's in the building, but it becomes a bit alive. And then the stair tower on the corner is lit and hopefully secure. and then this flood lighting coming down that curtain of stainless steel wall panel to signal to people that that is a welcome entrance into the parking deck and available. And that's basically the quick of it.
Any questions? Thank you. Do you all have anyone else on your team? No, okay. At this point, I'll open the public hearing. If there's anyone wishing to speak on this item, please come forward. Please state your name.
Mayor and Council, my name is Byron Griner. I always do this. I'm not here on behalf of my role as the Downtown Commissioner or as the Downtown Association Issues Chair. I represent the developers that own the S&W, the Bank of America building, and the Swicegood building, who they intended to build a luxury Parisian hotel, coordinating that with the S&W. Their feeling is if this building is built at this location, that'll increase the population of some undesirables that we deal with every day in terms of the homeless and panhandling. And I've been working with a number of homeless providers, talking with city council members individually, county commissioners, and with Mission to locate a campus. I know Jan and I have had lots of conversations about this, to where we could move a lot of the providers into one location efficiently, where it would be cost efficient, deliver better services, alleviate some of the issues with Mission and the emergency rooms. There are models like that in other parts of the country, and have identified a location and shared that with county commissioners as well as some city council members. I would like to call out that we did request through Downtown Commission that it have public restrooms, and that is not part of the design. Let's see, if we were to come up with another location, which has been shared with the county, we're looking at over $10 million worth of property that could possibly be packed back on the tax roll and refurbished so that both Buncombe County and City Council or City could get that tax revenue. So those are kind of the bases. But in the meantime, the developers of the Bank of America building, the S&W, and the Swicegood building have decided to put that on the market. So we just listed that property. They're pretty upset. They wanted to invest quite a bit of money into Asheville. They're continually panhandled when they're in town. They brought that up to a number of you. I know you've heard that before. So another location, this is a wonderful building. I know there is a lot of need for additional growth, no question to that. But another location is what they would desire. So that's why I'm here to speak on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Nancy Hayes, and in full disclosure, I'm employed by MRK Investment, who he was speaking for, but I'm here as a private citizen. I've only worked for them for like 6 months. There are not jobs in this town. And so by doing that, well, let me back up. When I first moved here, there was nobody downtown. There was plumbing fixtures in where Blue Spiral is now. There was a XXX movie theater. Nobody came downtown. Nobody wanted, there was one restaurant, Jared's or Gatsby's. But a lot of people put a lot of hard work into developing downtown. Roger McGuire, you can just name. You all know the history as well as I do. And I feel like we're shooting ourselves in the foot again with this because we have a lot of trouble with panhandling, and I believe these people need all the help we can give them. I don't think they get enough help. But do they need it in the 10 or 15 blocks of the most expensive real estate in Western North Carolina? I mean, truly. What's wrong with the Innsbrook Mall? You could build your 30 million building there and you would be doing the great favor that you did, because the time I'm talking about, when real estate was cheap, that's when you bought those buildings, almost 30 years ago. And you helped the community. You brought people downtown. There were people there to go out to have lunch. Now what are you going to bring downtown? And how are we going to deal with them? You're not even providing them with bathrooms. They already don't have anywhere to go. And the little bit of panhandling they get, that's not even a temporary solution. They can't even buy a hot dog with it. I feel for them, but we can't help them this way. And you're not helping them by bringing them downtown. You're driving out business. And other people aren't going to have jobs now because we're going to build condos or something else in that building instead of the Parisian, instead of having an event space or something that gives us wonderful jobs. And they're not the only developers. I know you all have heard from Pack Square, the people investment group there. They feel just as strongly about this. So why leave it here? Why do that? I don't understand. You could sell your investment. The plumbing supply had to move out when the rents went up. Why don't
just
you?
to clarify, we don't own this. This is the county.
Okay, it's a government building, and you're approving it. So, I mean, I am a taxpayer. Why not sell it, make some money, go build something wonderful in Innsbrook Mall? Build that area up. That's still within your client range. It's on the bus line. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Okay. No one else? I will close the public hearing.
Can I just ask Mr. Frew one thing? There was an exhibit that has a statement on findings, which each of these 10 findings that was submitted.
Exactly. Ms. Gurn, I was going to ask to speak to that.
Okay, all right, I just want to make sure it gets in the record.
Council, based on the information presented and filed with the application and the testimony of Mr. Creighton and and our architect as well, Keith Hargrove, I would like to state that it is the county's position that the information presented, factual information supporting each and every one of the required findings for conditional use, specifically from the UDO section 7-16.2 and 7-16.2C13. For the reasons stated in your agenda packet and the conditional use permit application statement of findings. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer, but there are specific 10 findings that we ask that this council make and approve this application as submitted with the conditions stated by Mr. Glines.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments, or a motion?
Mayor, I have a question probably of Mr. Creighton. John, I probably should know the answer to this one, but I really don't. I actually was part of a business where your parking lot is in the back there, the old Sears built tire and
Jimmy
auto. Yeah, I used to work in there at times. And so I know a lot of the comings and goings of DSS. But I honestly don't know how much service you do to our transient homeless population. There's been, Byron mentioned it and the lady that just spoke. We have a lot of downtown homelessness, but those people are kind of on the street and they gather in places, but how much do we have a lot of those folks applying for services out of that particular building?
I would say that, I mean, I would say that some of those people are disabled. Some of those people do get Medicaid rather. But I think that that's one reason why I touched in the 1 in 5 people in our community get assistance of some sort. And when you say 1 in 5, I mean, I don't know, 25 people in this room. That's
Yeah.
you know, that means 5 people in here probably get assistance. So it's more than just panhandlers or whatever. It's working people.
I would
can't make it.
I would say that the transient homeless, the chronic homeless, are a very small percentage
Oh,
of
they are.
people that are
I mean,
serviced.
they just
There's a large percentage that are serviced from the whole community there.
Yeah, I mean,
Hold on, we can't, so this is all televised, so only the person who's speaking at the microphone is, anyone at home can see. So go ahead and finish your comment.
but, I mean, I would say that, yes, but, I mean, this is, when you talk about 100,000 clients a year, I mean, the homeless population in the city of Asheville is very small. So, yeah, it's probably 1%.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback on that, the city's 10-year plan, and the city and the county's 10-year plan to end chronic homelessness has reduced homelessness by over 82% in the community, and we are looking at getting to functional zero in the near future. Can't account for the transient homeless folks that come through. That's a whole different subset and a whole different population. I just wanted to just echo again, this building is at the epicenter of the bus service. This is the easiest place that you guys could put this, especially for families that are in need. And that what draws panhandlers downtown isn't services, it's money. They come downtown because that's where the money is. And so it doesn't matter where you put this building, you still have your panhandlers downtown. That just stands to reason. If there's 100,000 people in need of assistance, this is a great place to provide it. The 650 parking places that are going to also provide this public good is incredible. Downtown has been crying out for more parking down here. City's a little overextended as far as creating parking down here, so this is an enormous benefit to everyone who comes downtown and who works and who lives down here. And ultimately, downtown's not just for the wealthy. Downtown's for everybody. This is where the whole city can come together. This is for all of us. And that may make some of us, or all of us, uncomfortable sometimes. But we don't need to make an effort to sanitize it. We need to make an effort to open it up and make it as livable as possible for as many as possible. So I'll be supporting this tonight.
I would take a different view on the parking part. Yeah, it's great that it's by the bus station, but as the research I did when we were voting on the 51 Biltmore parking deck revealed, it's not smart growth to put a big parking deck downtown. It's a waste of our really valuable real estate. Parking should be a little bit peripheral to downtown. People should have to walk a few blocks. People actually like it better if they have to walk a few blocks from their parking because they look in store windows and stuff. It makes the downtown more vibrant to put the parking further away. And I think it's a tragic waste of the space. I think the project is a good idea. I mean, I know we need to provide those services as a county, but I sure wish that we weren't putting 600 parking spaces there. That seems like a real waste of downtown real estate. And I think I believe, I'd make a $5 bet, and that's as big as I ever bet, with anybody who wants to bet that this city's going to live to regret the 51 Biltmore investment. But I'll vote for it because I don't think it's going to be killed, and Human Services needs the building.
Okay, anyone else? So, do I have a motion?
I'd have to lean over there.
Is it on?
We can't open our link,
Here.
so we don't have.
Is it on here?
I'll do the motion.
Okay,
I got it.
Jan's
I have the,
already-
I have the motion.
I've got a hard copy.
Okay.
I move to approve the zoning map amendment from RS8 and Central Business District to Central Business District as a standard rezoning amendment to the.
Not the right motion.
You might be
Whoop,
reading
I'm
the wrong.
sorry.
See, this is where,
What'd you do?
Here.
Where am I?
the county all get iPads. Just wanna point out.
I move,
Sorry about that. Somebody else got.
Okay,
Gwen got
Gwen's
it.
on it.
because Robin says this is the one that works. I move to approve the conditional use permit for Buncombe County Health and Human Services Building and Parking Garage located at 40 Cox Avenue, subject to the site plan and elevations and conditions outlined in the Technical Review Committee report, because the proposal meets the 10 conditional use permit standards as demonstrated by the applicant.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Any
Reluctantly.
opposed?
Aye. No, I was an aye, not a
Kind of a
nay.
babbling aye.
It was a babbling aye, yeah.
No. All right, unanimous, thank you. Thank you for staying with us on our late evening here, thank you. All right, we have one other public hearing, and the great return of Sasha. A public hearing to consider rezoning of property near 230 Hilliard Street at 99999 South French Broad Avenue and at 999999 South Grove Street from RS8 Residential Single Family High Density District to Central Business District. Oh, no.
Man down.
We're having technical problems ourselves.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council, members of the public. This is a request for a straight rezoning, as you stated. The subject parcels are on the edge of the CBD, near the corner of South French Broad and Hilliard. Hilliard is to the north, and South French Broad is on the west. The applicant is Robert Gelder, representing Hilliard Avenue LLC. The rezoning is for one small parcel right here and for a split-zoned parcel. These two areas. These two parcels have a combined area of 0.66 acres, but the total area that we're trying to rezone, or we're asking to rezone tonight, is approximately 0.11 acres, so about a little over a tenth of an acre. The adjacent property to the north and east is zoned CBD, and to the south is RS8, and across the way, Aston Park is zoned RM8. This map shows where the property is on the edge of the CBD. And really, what this request will do is clean up, the zoning district lines along parcel lines. We believe that these parcels were left out of the CBD at a point when we had an unlimited height zone in the central business district, if you remember. And there was no real tool to protect the neighborhoods. But now, and as they're currently zoned, you can't effectively use this land at all. It's too small to put anything there. So this rezoning would then extend the intermediate height zone, and it's literally like 30 and 20 feet south. It's very small areas in the green area here. And it would also effectively, similarly, change the context transition zone, which you've heard about in the past in downtown. That context transition zone is that area that where we put above residentially zoned areas next to CBD, and it basically protects the neighborhood. So any development within the first 100 feet is limited in height, and it can gradually go up. So, and on this particular parcel right here on the corner of South French Broad and Hilliard, it's really about 130 feet. So it's pretty limited in height already. And right now there are no current plans for development on these parcels.
Okay, any questions? Was that it? Did I cut you off? Did you have more?
I was just going to say, recently there was a rezoning near these parcels, and that was a separate matter. That was last summer, and this is really, truly more of a cleaning up of the lines.
Yeah,
and
that's what it looks like to me.
This proposal was given as an update to the Downtown Commission in December, and we took it to the Planning and Zoning Commission on February 2nd, and they approved it at a vote of 7-0. And we're recommending approval for the reasons I've stated, and as you know, the Downtown Master Plan kind of contemplates expanding the CBD, and the design guidelines and the context transition zone will help the neighborhood. And that's all I have. Happy to take any other questions.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? No? Anyone? I will open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to comment on this item? I will close the public hearing. There are two suggested motions. Do you know which one to use? Mine has two. I don't. Maybe no.
Yeah, mine has two.
You're right. Not blowing it.
So
okay, wait.
I won't tell you the whole long story, but the second motion I think is the correct motion. We took out the second motion, the first motion, and it just didn't get posted.
So the longer one.
The longer one at the bottom.
Mayor, I move to approve the zoning map amendment from RS8 and Central Business District to Central Business District as a standard rezoning, the amendment to the height zone map, and find that the request is reasonable, is in the public interest, and is consistent with the comprehensive plan and other adopted plans in the following ways. 1, references to CDB expansion in the 2025 plan and the downtown master plan, and 2, design standards and the application of the context transition edge should minimize impact from future development on adjacent neighborhood.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank you. All right, that is the last item on our public hearings agenda because item D has been withdrawn by the applicant and there is no other business on here. I do have one person signed up to speak. Todd Stimpson.
Hello, City Council. I'm Todd Stimpson. I've sent you an email that has a couple documentations attached to it. One is House Bill 78, which is a medical cannabis bill that is presented down in Raleigh right now. And also the other is a public policy poll that we just most recently taken in the end of January. And it shows 7 out of 10 people in North Carolina, citizens, are in support of medical use for cannabis. The last time I was in here asking for the city to back legislation was May of last year. It was for a study bill, and there was suggestions of you backing that legislation, and my daughter was in here the last time with me. Oh, she's a survivor of cancer. She didn't have hair then. She has hair now, and she's still doing real good. And so there's benefits out there for cannabis, and you guys really need to start looking into it because the wave of change is coming across the country, and it's a matter of people just being educated on the truth and really looking into the truth of the matters. And even your Representative Ager has co-sponsored the House Bill 78, and we have a personal email from him where he has a personal experience that he saw the benefits of cannabis of one of his friends before she passed away. So until you really have a personal experience, you're not really going to understand the benefits from cannabis or from the other aspects, the industrial aspect of it. The books I'm going to give to you, and there's a brochure in it, it's called Freedom Leaf. It's supporting NORML, which I'm the executive director of North Carolina NORML and the executive director of Asheville NORML that I'm reviving. And also they're supporting the Students for Sensible Drug Policy too. So if I can hand these over here, I'll pass them on to you guys. And then I don't know what you have to do as far as make a motion or put it on the agenda or what you have to do to show a public hearing or whatever to get you guys to back the legislation if it has to be put on the next agenda or whatever. And I wanted to touch base on something that I didn't actually know I had the chance to stand up and talk about was the tax aspect. Where state sees your money, sometimes it is good how it is received, but then other times it punishes people more than anything, and it only rewards the police officers. Because I have friends and personal experience myself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, thank you.
All right, that was the only person I had signed up to speak, but anybody else who would like to speak has the opportunity to do so now.
Mayor?
Yes, announcements.
May I?
Yes.
Just a couple of really big things coming up. Southern Conference will be starting next week, and huge amount of people coming to the community, and that will start on Thursday. Southern Conference men's and women's basketball tournament, and this year we got a real special treat. We have the Southern Conference Wrestling Championships as well with their program is going to be called Headlock on, or they have a program that goes with it. It's called Headlock on Hunger. It will benefit Evelyn Foundation, and just going to be a great weekend. Downtown Dribble will occur for kids. We'll start on Pack Square on Saturday morning and go to the U.S. Cellular Center. I think it's 10 o'clock, but don't hold me to that. But just a lot of great events will be around that. Friday evening this year we'll be having games where we did not last year because some teams had pulled out of the Southern Conference, but we've got new teams and more games this year, but there's also going to be an evening at the Grove Arcade. It'll be similar to a downtown after 5. There'll be music, bluegrass music, local food, beer, soft drinks, the whole 9 yards, just like a small downtown inside after 5. And just great tickets available. It's going to be a good time. And along with that, our own UNCA Bulldogs will be heading to their tournament in at Coastal Carolina down in Myrtle Beach, and hope they do well. And a very important event is going to take place Thursday evening. The Bulldogs will be playing on ESPN 2. So it'll be really great. We get a lot of turnout from the community because it looks great on television to have people there at Kimmel Arena, and it's going to be a fun evening.
Our family's really excited about the addition of wrestling, and I will be watching a lot of wrestling that weekend. And I believe my husband is helping make sure they all have mats. So.
The mat man.
Just to follow up on Mr. Stimson's comments with the introduction of the bill and with a member of our local delegation co-signing that legislation, I would be interested in kind of airing that among council to determine whether there was support for city backing for the medical cannabis bill.
Second.
We could.
Intended as a motion, intended as a.
I know it's not a motion. That's what I was going to say. I would like to discuss it. Yeah. As part of our agenda, our legislative agenda.
We could route it to governance, since we now have that process sort of established for consideration of that kind of thing. That would be my proposal.
For the creation of a resolution in support to determine whether there was support for creating a resolution for support?
Or to craft a resolution.
Craft a resolution.
You know, the long session's underway now. Yeah, the long session's underway now, so, you know, and the bill's up now, so I think we would want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it would be helpful to review it in governance. I'd like to see if other cities are taking a position on the bill, or if cities are leaving it alone and there's other groups stepping up, or, you know, just what's the most effective way to tackle that issue. I'd just like a chance to review it.
That sounds great.
Okay. Any other exciting announcements or not exciting announcements? Oh, okay. All right, we're adjourned.